Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If Tai Lung Was Reborn in Avatar as a Firebender, Part 5. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The throne room of Ba Sing Se felt impossibly small beneath the weight of what they had just witnessed. Faces that had been stern a moment before were now pale and hollow. Everyone was scared of what was coming. At the side of the room, Aang sat with closed eyes meditating, his chest still glowing faintly from the communion with Rava. Silence was heavy as everyone watched him, waiting for whatever knowledge had passed between the spirit and the avatar. When Aang finally opened his eyes and rose, worry was etched across his features. He drew a long, steadying breath. Sokka, unable to hold back, burst forward with impatience. So what did you learn? Aang steadied himself and spoke quietly, a lot. He paused, then told them what Rava had shown and said. Long ago, tens of thousands of years ago, two primordial spirits existed, Rava, the spirit of light and order, and Vatu, the spirit of darkness and chaos. 10,000 years ago, an event unfolded that required Rava to merge with a human. Together they defeated and sealed Vatu once and for all, becoming the first avatar, the bridge between the human and spirit worlds. He let his words settle in before he continued. Vatu is unimaginably evil and powerful. According to Rava, if Vatu is freed, chaos and destruction will follow. Worse still, if Vatu were to merge with Tai Lung, an unstoppable, evil avatar would be born. Rava said Tai Lung is by far the strongest human she has ever seen. Sokka sagged his shoulders. That's not encouraging one bit, he muttered. What about turning the masters into green mindless slaves? Aang shook his head. She has never seen anything like that before, he answered, and Sokka's breath left him all at once. Toph's voice joined in. So this has escalated from stopping a war maniac who wants to rule the world to a crazy monster who wants to end it. She looked at the gathered people. Any idea what we should do? General Hao's jaw tightened. We are running out of time, he said. When the comet arrives, Tai Lung will be truly unstoppable. Our only chance is for the Avatar to defeat him now. Iroh, who had been listening with a sorrowful patience, shook his head. No, he said softly but firmly. That will not work. He is already powerful enough to contend with the Avatar, and with the White Lotus Masters on his side, obeying his every command, the Avatar wouldn't be able to defeat Tai Lung. Even if we assist the Avatar in his battle, we cannot be sure of victory. Katara's hands curled into worried fists. We can't just sit and wait for the end to come, she said. The Earth King, his face drawn with the pressure of impossible choices, watched his generals and supposed saviors feeling helpless under the scope of the incoming threat. At last the Earth King spoke, his voice small and uncertain. If there is no hope of winning against him, then perhaps we should free his father and surrender. Everyone stared at him, stunned by his words. General Hao barked, we can't allow them to win. The king's voice wavered. At least that way my people will survive to see tomorrow. I do not want the world to end because we pushed a madman too far. He turned toward Iroh. You were right all along, we should have freed his father. We provoked that monster into coming after us, now we must pay the price of our choice. General Hao's posture tightened as he considered the cost of the king's logic. After a long, weary breath, he said, I will deliver myself to that monster along with his father. The chamber went so still. General Hao continued, voice heavy with responsibility. I led the invasion and I kidnapped his father. He will not rest until he has my head. If that is the price for our people to survive when the time comes, then I will give it. Aang, steady despite the turmoil around him, said. Let us prepare our defenses, we will fight. If we are overwhelmed and there is truly no hope of victory, then we surrender. But until that point we must try everything. Eyes met eyes around the throne room, fright mirrored, and resolve kindling. They nodded slowly, reluctant but resolute, each person taking comfort in the other's willingness to stand together beneath the shadow of the coming disaster. The Fire Nation army made a camp 2 days' march from Ba Sing Se. With Tai Lung and Fire Lord Azula leading the army and Sozan's comet climbing the sky, morale was at its peak. Soldiers spoke in loud, hopeful voices. They viewed the march as the beginning of the end, certain the war would finally close with their victory. Near the command tent, Tai Lung, Tai Li, and I clustered with a handful of high-ranking officers while Azula engaged the jade form of Ozai in sparring. Though Ozai had been turned into a mindless jade puppet, the old Jade Fire Lord still retained his power and combat skill. The body moved with the memory of a master's technique. Even hollowed, he remained extremely powerful. Azula, determined to prove herself as Fire Lord, matched Ozai blow for blow without breaking a sweat. She pressed him hard, and the duel climbed toward a climax. Lightning tore from both their hands at once. The two bolts met and collided in mid-air, creating a thunderous explosion that threw smoke across the field. When the smoke cleared, Azula pushed through the haze and used the moment to strike Ozai off guard. A flurry of rapid blows toppled the jade figure. Tai Lung watched and, with a single wave from his hand, returned Ozai to his pendant form. "It is Azula's victory," he declared. The officers and soldiers around them broke into cheers and applause for their new Fire Lord. Azula took a steadying breath, relaxed into the triumph, and turned to Tai Lung with a question on her mind. "How strong is he compared to my free-willed father?" she asked. Tai Lung answered plainly, "They are pretty much the same. The difference is the lack of self-awareness." The remark made Azula smile. "So it is fine to say I have surpassed my father?" she asked, pride and a little mischief in her tone. Tai Lung nodded. "Yes, right now you are stronger than your father." Tai Li chimed in with heartfelt enthusiasm. "Congratulations, Azula." Azula laughed softly. "Thanks. I can now die happy knowing I am the second strongest firebender in the world." Mai added dryly, "I don't think we still can call Tai Lung a firebender at all. He is nothing like a firebender anymore." Azula shot a glance at Tai Lung. "Mai brings up a good point," she teased. "I am the strongest firebender in the world, you don't count." Tai Lung answered with level calm, "Fundamentally I am still a firebender. It is the only element I can bend." Azula's brow lifted and said in an amused tone, "Then figure out how to bend some other elements." "I don't want to remain the second for too long." Tai Li elbowed in with a grin. "He still needs to figure out how to make non-benders be able to bend first." Tai Lung let the banter pass and then reminded them of the larger purpose. "Are you all forgetting we are here to invade the capital of the Earth Kingdom?" Azula waved a hand in a dismissive motion while rolling her eyes. "I don't think we will fight. You're scary already, and when you add the comet, the Jade Masters, and that ancient evil spirit you threaten to free to the mix, who would dare to continue this war? Fighting you is lunacy." Azula paused, then added with a sharper edge, "Now that I think about it, you embody my father's ideology of ruling with fear far better than he ever did." Tai Lung's expression did not change as he replied, "You know why I am doing this." Tai Li's voice grew small with worry. "What if they hurt your father?" Tai Lung's answer was quiet and full of confidence, "They won't dare. My threat was not only to make them surrender but also to make them afraid to harm my father. They will not risk the chance of me truly going mad and destroying the world. By keeping my father safe, they will at least have the chance of surrendering and a world to live in the next day." Azula chuckled. "And you are cunning in your own way. They think this is about only freeing Admiral Lung and winning the war after their failed invasion. They won't expect what your true goal is besides saving your father." Tai Lung and the other girls smiled. The Fire Nation army reached the outskirts of Ba Sing Se under a sky streaked with the comet's tail. Sozan's comet passes once every 100 years, allowing the firebenders everywhere to experience a rare surge of power. Tai Lung stood at the forefront of the army with Azula, Tai Li, and Mai at his side. Azula's eyes shone, she lifted a hand and a great flame erupted in her palm. "The comet has arrived," she said, a satisfied laugh threaded through her words. "My fire has never been stronger." She tried to form a small controlled spark only to watch the flame swell on its own, growing far larger than she'd intended. She let it boil and curl in her hand, amused and pleased by the ease of it. "I wanted to create a small flame, but look at the size." Tai Lung studied the living blaze for a long moment before answering. "The comet's arrival brought with it a great chi," he observed. "It is filling the world around us. When you ignite fire, that chi is injected into the flame, making it more than 10 times more powerful." Tai Li asked, "Why is that?" Tai Lung shook his head once. "I don't know." He sounded thoughtful. "This is the first time I am seeing this. The chi is selective. It empowers fire only. The comet doesn't feel like a spirit the way the moon does." He frowned, eyes narrowing as he considered a hypothesis aloud. Could it be that this is a spirit traveling along the comet, affecting an area much like the fog in the spirit world? "My cut-in, do you forget where we are? We were about to invade Ba Sing Se, remember?" She exhaled. Tai Lung gave a short chuckle. "No hurry," he said. "We have enough time." Tai Li asked again. "Do you think they will surrender?" Tai Lung's gaze moved to the city walls, to the tiny figures of defenders, the patrols running along the ramparts. "No," he said simply. "They plan to fight." Azula's eyes glittered with impatience. If they planned to fight, why wait till the comet arrived? Their odds were already bad enough. Is there no one among them who is sane enough to say it is a disaster to battle us during the comet? She scanned the walls with clear disdain in her eyes. If I were on their side, would have harassed the invading army along the way, set traps, or done anything to delay them and make them miss the comet. Tai Li tried to imagine such tactics. They could dig holes or trenches, she suggested. Azula nodded. That would have been better than waiting for the attack to happen, she agreed. Mai snapped them back to the present again. You are digressing again. Will you start the attack already? Tai Lung smiled without humor. He stepped forward and, from his open palm, flung a handful of jade pendants into the air. Then he punched and kicked them with all his might, sending them flying into the distance. They spun and flashed. As they reached their apex, many erupted in a sickly green light. Jaded figures burst into being and flew like living projectiles, slicing the air with fire bending as they rose over Ba Sing Se's wall. The pendants that continued falling struck the ground and detonated in green energy, and from each blast great rocks erupted, charging toward the city like roaring beasts. Mai said. Finally. Can we charge now? No hurry, Tai Lung said again. Let the Jade Warriors fight for a little. I also want to try something Zhong liked to do. Azula's brow arched and asked. What did the old traitor do? Tai Lung extended an arm. A great wall of fire erupted in the distance, rising high in the air, then moved forward, burning everything in its path. He can raise a wall of fire from a distance and then drive it forward, Tai Lung said, watching the advancing flame. That would be an interesting way to attack the wall, no? On the wall the army of the Fire Nation stretched across the horizon like a sea of blood. On top of Ba Sing Se's massive outer wall, the Avatar, Sokka, Iroh, Zuko, and the Earth Kingdom's defenders stood in grim silence, watching. The air was heavy, oppressive, with the glow of Sozin's comet streaking high above. They knew its fiery presence was going to empower every flame the Fire Army ignited. General Hao raised a spyglass, his voice full of unease. I don't understand, why are they just standing there like that? Why not charge? Sokka replied. Maybe they're waiting for the comet to grant them power? No, Iroh cut him off immediately, his voice steady but grim. The comet is already here. Its power has been flowing through us since it crossed the sky. That is not why they wait. Sokka frowned. Then, they're strategizing how to attack us. As if to confirm his words, General Hao stiffened. His tone rose with urgency. They're starting. Tai Lung is moving. Everyone tensed as Tai Lung stepped forward. He hurled a cluster of green, glowing stones high into the air toward the wall. The defenders watched in dread as the first stone ignited mid-flight with a sickly emerald light. From its eruption, 4 jade figures emerged, flying straight toward them with a trail of fire behind them. The lead figure thrust a fist forward, and a massive torrent of fire screamed toward the wall. Aang reacted instantly, sweeping his staff and bending a burst of air that scattered the blaze before it reached the defenders. But before the fire had even dispersed completely, 2 more pillars of fire roared from the flanks, bearing down on them. Iroh and Zuko stepped forward in unison, fire meeting fire, their combined bending held the attacks back. Then the stone beneath their feet exploded. Flames burst upward, forcing them to leap clear. Off the wall. Iroh barked. Aang caught Sokka with a sweep of air and glided them both to safety. Iroh and Zuko used controlled jets of fire to descend, while the Earth Kingdom soldiers scrambled down the stone by bending footholds as they went. The 4 jade figures landed hard on the street below, the ground trembling under their impact. Iroh and Zuko froze as they caught sight of them. 3 were familiar, Zhong Zhong and 2 other members of the White Lotus. But the one at their forefront made Zuko's blood run cold. Father! Zuko's voice cracked with shock. Iroh's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. So, you did not survive Tai Lung after all, brother. The soldiers around them gasped, horrified. Aang's eyes widened in disbelief. That man, he's Zuko's father? The previous Fire Lord? Iroh's tone dropped into gravity. Yes. Aang's stomach turned. The enemy he had prepared for all this time, the monster he once thought he would need to face, had already been broken, enslaved, and turned into a lifeless weapon. His grip on his staff tightened until his knuckles whitened. I won't let Tai Lung win. I won't let him do this to my friends, but before he could even move, the wall behind them shook violently. With a thunderous crack, stone burst outward in an explosion of force. Dust and rubble rained down, and through the breach came another wave of jade light. Figures marched in, leading the charge Bumi and followed by the rest of the White Lotus, their eyes lifeless. Spirits. Sokka whispered. The defenders pulled together, backs against one another, encircled by jade warriors on both sides. Relief came in a surge of footsteps, with Toph, Katara, and more Earth Kingdom reinforcements rushing from the other sections of the wall to join the stand. Toph's voice was as loud as ever. You old senile man, she screamed across the battlefield, locking eyes with Bumi. Puppet or not, I'm still the greatest earthbender in the world, come face me. Master Pakku. Katara's voice cracked with grief as she faced her jaded mentor. Please, resist. Don't let Tai Lung control you. The street right behind the wall became a battlefield in an instant. Iroh stepped forward to meet Ozai, fire already curling around his fists. Zuko squared himself against Zhong Zhong, his eyes blazing with equal parts rage and sorrow. Katara lifted her arms, water already swirling, as she met Pakku's relentless attacks. Toph bent her knees, stone trembling under her bare feet, ready to clash with the oldest Earth King. And at the center of it all, Aang, Sokka, and the gathered soldiers braced themselves as the rest of the White Lotus Jade warriors pressed in. The battle to defend Ba Sing Se had begun. The Jade Masters moved as one, attacking all their enemies at the same time. Their eyes glowed faintly green under the comet's fiery light, each strike stripped of mercy, each motion stripped of hesitation. Iroh faced his brother. Ozai moved like a storm, fire bursting from his fists in roaring waves, his jade-bound body moving with the same vigor he had in his normal state. Even if Iroh didn't see eye to eye with his brother, Iroh's heart twisted at the sight nonetheless. Brother. He muttered, before bracing himself and answering fire with fire. Their attacks clashed, comet-fueled flames devouring the air. The sheer power of the two forced everyone away from them. Zuko engaged Zhong. Zuko heard about Zhong's disciplined style from his uncle, and now Zuko could tell that it is still present even in Zhong's hollow state. Zhong's flames curved and flowed like a river, pushing Zuko back. I won't lose to you. I was taught by a greater firebender than you, Zuko growled, ducking under a strike. Katara stood opposite Pakku, and her heart ached. His ice attack came mercilessly, with walls and spears rising from the ground. She answered with water drawn from every source around them, her voice breaking as she said, "Please, Master Pakku, wake up." She split a column of ice with a whip of water. Toph cracked her knuckles as Bumi charged her, the ground trembling with every step he took. The old king bent stone with terrifying force, ripping entire slabs of earth and hurling them like children's toys. Toph smirked, confident in her abilities. I am the greatest earthbender in the world. You being a mindless doll or senile crazy old man won't make a difference. She stomped the ground, pillars shooting upward, colliding with Bumi's boulders in deafening bursts. Aang spun his staff, air whipping around him as jade warriors pressed in. Sokka and earth soldiers joined, trying to turn the tide. Aang's eyes darted between the duels, his allies clashing with their own teachers, family and friends. This is horrible, the jade warriors attacked relentlessly. Their bending was as if they were alive. Behind you! Sokka yelled, blocking a jade soldier with a desperate strike of his spear. The impact sent Sokka flying. Sokka! Aang twirled his staff, air bursting outward to push back 3 more. We have to end this fast, he shouted. At that moment, Iroh was driven to one knee by Ozai's relentless assault. Fire licked his arms and singed his robes. Still, Iroh rose, eyes blazing. You may not have been a kind soul, brother, but I won't allow you to be used like this. His fire roared outward, a dragon's breath that pushed Ozai back. Zuko stumbled, his arms burned from Zhong's strikes. But instead of falling, Zuko performed a rotation from the group, sending waves of fire at Zhong, causing the old man to jump back. Katara's voice grew hoarse as she clashed with Pakku. You told me you found Gran to start a new life with her, that you will go back to her once this is over. Please remember who you are. Toph's clash with Bumi was the second most destructive after Iroh and Ozai. It was as if it shook the city itself. The ground split and buckled, buildings collapsing as the two greatest earthbenders alive hurled the world at each other. You're tough, old man, I will give you that, Toph gritted out, sweat running down her brow, but I'm tougher. She slammed her foot, creating a canyon between them. Still, the Jade Masters kept fighting tirelessly and kept pressing fearlessly. But the battleground froze when a low rumble shook the earth. Every combatant turned as the wall of Ba Sing Se lit up with jagged blue cracks. The glowing line spread like veins across the massive stone, and then with a deafening roar, the wall erupted outward. Stone shattered, flames tore through the air, and an entire side of the city's outer defense crumbled into ruin. Dust and smoke poured into the sky, blocking everything from view. The defenders' eyes widened in terror as they saw parts of the fallen wall glowing red, molten under the unimaginable heat. No. One soldier whispered, voice trembling. Before anyone could even move, shadows blotted the smoke above. Dozens of massive fireballs came raining down from the sky, meteors of flame hurled from Fire Nation siege weapons and benders alike. They smashed into the streets beyond, exploding in violent waves that devoured whole blocks of the city. Aang spread his arms wide and spun his staff, a powerful gust of air blasting the dust and smoke away. His heart sank at the sight revealed. Fire Nation catapults had already rolled up to the ruined wall. Airships loomed overhead, blotting the sky. And at the front of the advancing army, walking with unshakable calm, was Tai Lung. The Avatar's stomach twisted. They were already struggling against the Jade Masters. Now the wall was gone, the Fire Nation army, unstoppable even on a normal day, was marching with the comet blazing above them. And worse than all of that, Tai Lung had come. Aang's fingers twitched near his staff. Should I go into the avatar state now? The thought pounded in his mind. But the truth gnawed at him. He wasn't ready. He still hadn't fully mastered firebending. The comet empowered Tai Lung beyond imagination. Can I even win? Tai Lung smiled as he approached, his voice carrying easily across the battlefield. I gave you a chance to surrender. But you chose war. Tell me, what did you hope to achieve with the comet in the sky? Even without me, Azula and the rest of the army could have toppled this city. General Hao stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. We will defend our homes until the very end. Tai Lung's eyes narrowed. You could have avoided all of this had you surrendered and freed my father. We would not have needed to attack the city and cause so much destruction. You can do it now, of course, and no further harm will touch the city. His smile grew colder. Or we can continue and burn it all to ash if you wish. General Hao's jaw tightened. As if we would believe your words. Tai Lung chuckled, gesturing toward the shattered wall. I just destroyed your great pride, your outer wall. What do you think will happen if I unleash that same fire on your homes? On your families? The general's face went pale. I am a kind man, Tai Lung added mockingly. So I will give you 10 seconds to decide. Surrender, or watch your world burn. Aang stepped forward, fists clenched. We will never trust you. You killed and turned the White Lotus into slaves. Tai Lung's gaze locked on him. So, the Avatar wishes to fight me? If you think the only way you stop this army is by defeating me, then you are right. But do you really think you can win? Aang said nothing, but the look in his eyes spoke for him. Sokka suddenly barked out, if you've got guts, then face Aang one-on-one after the comet passes. Let's see how great you are then. The silence that followed was heavy. Tai Lung tilted his head, amusement flickering across his face. I'm fine with that. But the Earth Kingdom must surrender. They will lay down their arms. Their leaders will be taken as prisoners of war. His voice rang across the ruined field. The Avatar will face me to the death after the comet. If I fall, the Fire Nation leaves Ba Sing Se. If the Avatar dies, well, you've already lost everything. A long silence stretched until General Hao finally spoke, his voice breaking. If you keep your words, we surrender. Gasps and murmurs erupted among the defenders. Even Aang spun toward him in shock. General Hao turned to the young Avatar, his face grim. There is no hope of victory now, not under the comet. But if you win, Avatar, there will still be hope to restore balance to the world. I have already discussed this possibility with the king. He raised his voice, addressing the soldiers behind him. All soldiers, lower your weapons. Let it be known, the Earth Kingdom surrenders. Weapons clattered to the ground, one by one. The sound echoed in the silence of defeat. Tai Lung said, I must say, this great invasion was anticlimactic. Tai Lung's gaze shifted back to Aang. Feel free to stay or leave, it doesn't matter. When you are ready, seek me out. His eyes then turned, sharp as blades, toward Iroh and Zuko. As for you two, you have much explaining to do. Especially about where you fit in the kidnapping of my father. Iroh stared silently at Tai Lung, then sighed, while Zuko's eyes moved behind Tai Lung, where Mai was staring daggers at him and Azula was frowning. In the Earth Palace in Ba Sing Se, its grand conference, once a place where the Earth King and his top officers and generals planned their next moves with the help of the Avatar, now served as the council room of the Fire Nation's conquerors. Tai Lung sat along with Azula, their eyes fixed on the weary man before them. Admiral Shulian Lung looked nothing like the strong, proud admiral they knew. Weeks of captivity had left him gaunt, his clothes disheveled, his beard uneven, and a dull hollowness clinging to his eyes. But as he sat listening to his son recount all that had happened since his imprisonment, the removal of Fire Lord Ozai, the rise of Azula, and the fall of Ba Sing Se in a single day, his shoulders straightened. A proud smile crept across his tired features. His son had come for him. His son had triumphed over the Earth Kingdom just for him. Azula lounged back in her chair with her usual grace, her fingers tapping lazily on the armrest. "You'll be pleased to know, Admiral," she said smoothly, "that the Earth King and his top generals are now in prison. They'll taste the same hospitality you endured." Her smile sharpened as her amber eyes flicked toward Tai Lung. "I should add, Uncle Iroh was here in Ba Sing Se as well. He may have known about our enemy's plans and your imprisonment." Admiral Lung's proud smile faltered into a frown. "Where is he now?" he asked, his voice low. Tai Lung answered, "Under arrest. But I didn't send him to rot like the others. He's confined to one of the palace rooms. I thought you'd want to speak with him yourself, considering your past friendship." The Admiral's brows knitted together, then relaxed into a thoughtful nod. "Good. Very good." His eyes narrowed. "And Prince Zuko? Was he with him?" "Yes," Azula said sharply, her tone curling with contempt. "My dear brother never left Uncle's side, as one might expect. He's with Mai at the moment." She insisted on talking to him. Azula's lips thinned. "Personally, I consider both of them traitors who should be treated as such. But your son," her gaze flicked to Tai Lung with a trace of annoyance, "wouldn't allow it." Admiral Lung studied his son for a moment, then turned back to Azula. "Allow me to speak with General Iroh, Fire Lord." Azula waved her hand dismissively, "Do whatever you want." Rising gracefully to her feet, she smirked at Tai Lung. "I'll see to the army and tighten our hold on the city. If I need your help, I'll let you know." Tai Lung gave a curt nod, watching her stride out, before turning back to his father. For a long moment, the room was quiet. "Where is your fiancée?" Admiral Lung asked at last. "You told me she came with you." "She's with Mai," Tai Lung answered. "She was worried about her." The Admiral's expression softened. He walked around the table, his roughened hand landing on Tai Lung's shoulder. "I am proud of you, my son." Tai Lung's mouth curved into a smile. "Glad you're safe, father." "Come," Admiral Lung said after a moment. "Let us meet with General Iroh." And together, they left the conference chamber. Iroh sat on the edge of the bed in one of the Earth Palace chambers. It was a great room, spacious and hung with green banners trimmed in gold, the kind of place meant for important guests. Yet the Dragon of the West felt no peace here. His mind, heavy with grief, wandered restlessly back over the chaos of recent days. The Jade Masters weighed most heavily on him. He had seen much in his life, wars and conquests, cruelties and betrayals, all kinds of horrors brought by war, but never had he imagined something so foul. To take a person, to strip them of their will, their thought, their very self, and turn them into a puppet, it was an evil that chilled him to the marrow. The image of their lifeless, glassy eyes haunted him, a horror far beyond inflicting harm on the body. His heart ached as he thought of his companions in the White Lotus. Gone, all gone. Men who understood him, men who had the well of the world in their hearts, and men he had trusted were wiped away like dust in the wind. Even his brother, for all his flaws, had been lost. Iroh's mind drifted further back, to the first time he had seen Tai Lung. A young boy then, training in fierce silence, his movements already sharp and honed beyond his years. A prodigy, Iroh had thought at once, the sort that appears perhaps once in 1,000 years. And the years that followed had proven it true. Tai Lung's rise was nothing less than meteoric, his power beyond what the Fire Nation had ever known. In all the long, blazing history of firebenders, none shone brighter. And yet, brilliance often casts long shadows. After the assassination attempt all those years ago, Iroh had begun to fear him. The violence, the sheer destructive potential, had seemed too great. Tai Lung could be a danger to the balance of the world itself. But then came the invasion of the North Pole, when Tai Lung had acted with restraint, with care. He had healed the moon spirit and fought not to ravage but to defend his retreating people. When Iroh listened to Tai Lung's thoughts afterward, he felt comforted. A man who acted with such thoughtfulness could not be evil. Or so Iroh had told himself. Dangerous? Terrible when angered? Brutal when pushed too far? All yes, but not evil or mindlessly destructive. That was why, when Shulian Lung had been taken captive, Iroh knew his old friend's son would come. And he had expected fury, brutality, and vengeance. He had not expected this. Not the Jade Masters. Not this vile invention. If he had known, if he had seen even a glimpse of the dark path Tai Lung would walk, Iroh might have raised his hand years ago. Might have tried to stop him before the seeds of this darkness had taken root. But the chance was gone. It's too late now. Tai Lung was unstoppable at this point. The soft creak of the door broke his thoughts. Iroh looked up, half expecting a guard, but froze at the sight of the two men entering. Admiral Shulian Lung, thinner than he remembered, his proud face marked by captivity, stood tall beside his son, who walked quietly by his side. Iroh rose at once, his lips curling into a guilty smile. I am glad you are safe, Shulian. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. I heard you've been in the Earth Kingdom all this time. I have one question, old friend. Did you know? Did you know of their plan to attack our home, and of my imprisonment? I was hiding with my nephew here in Ba Sing Se, Iroh answered. Disguised as refugees. I knew nothing of the attack until the army had already returned. Shulian's gaze bore into him silently. As for your imprisonment, Iroh continued, I only heard of it once Tai Lung had begun his march on this city. And after hearing of it, the Admiral pressed, his voice lower, colder, you never thought of visiting? Iroh sighed, heavy as an old man's heart. I was only the Avatar's fire-bending teacher. They would not allow me to see you. They would not even tell me where you were kept. I tried to persuade them to release you, I truly did, but they would not listen. He fell silent for a moment, then added softly, I swear this is the truth. For a long breath, the Admiral studied him. Then, at last, his face eased into a small smile. For a moment, I was worried you had betrayed our nation, and forgotten we were friends. Relief warmed Iroh's tired face as he returned the smile. I did betray our nation, he said simply. But never forget, my friends. From behind, Tai Lung's voice cut in, I don't know why I expected something more violent between you two, maybe some resentment. But I suppose this is good enough. Iroh's gaze fixed on him, you have won the war, Tai Lung. You have freed your father. Please, let the dead rest now. One of Tai Lung's brows arched. Are you speaking of the Jade soldiers? Iroh nodded, his expression grave. You have used them enough. Do not dishonor them further. A slow, amused smile curled Tai Lung's lips. His golden eyes glinted, who told you they are dead? The Admiral became confused and asked, what are you two talking about? Tai Lung answered, a while ago, I went to the spirit world, and after a few things happened there, I learned from a greedy yak how to turn masters into Jade soldiers. The target's body becomes encased in jade, and they become an extension of my will. I can control them and use them to fight, and they retain all their strength and skills. The Admiral's face became full of shock. How could something like that exist? And you used that in this invasion? Tai Lung with an amused tone. Yes. I turned a group of masters from all nations into Jade soldiers and made them attack the city. They alone almost broke the defenders' will. And, well, this technique comes from a different world, literally. Shulian kept staring at his son as if he had just heard the most absurd thing in the world. I can show you later, Tai Lung added with a smile. Iroh asked what mattered most to him. Are they truly still alive? Tai Lung nodded. They're just in a deep slumber. I'll release them when I'm done. Iroh let out a quiet breath of relief but pressed further. Done with what exactly? Tai Lung smiled faintly. I've finally decided what I want to do with my life. And for it to work, I need the world to be in peace and balance. The answer left Iroh with more questions. It had been a week since Sozan's comet blazed across the sky and sealed the fate of the Earth Kingdom. The walls of Ba Sing Se, once thought impenetrable, lay in ruin. Its king and leaders had been thrown into prison, while Fire Nation officers prowled the vast palace halls where the Earth King and his people had once lived. Outside, the great army of the Fire Nation still surrounded the city, a reminder that Ba Sing Se had fallen. Yet to everyone's astonishment, life inside the city carried on as though nothing had changed. Under Azula's orders, the soldiers kept their distance from the people. Shops opened as usual, markets bustled, and daily life returned to the streets. The Dai Li and Earth Kingdom guards still patrolled, managing the city much as before. In exchange for this strange freedom, however, Azula's decree was clear: the citizens were not to raise a hand against Fire Nation soldiers. To the city and to the world beyond, Azula announced that the Fire Nation had won the war, yet she bound her victory with an unusual agreement. By the terms spoken between Tai Lung and the Avatar, once the Avatar was ready, he would face Tai Lung in single combat. Should the Avatar triumph, the Fire Nation would withdraw. The proclamation baffled both the Fire Nation soldiers and the Earth Kingdom citizens alike. But in its wake came a fragile peace. Past the initial shock, the Fire Nation soldiers put their complete faith in their nation's champion, Tai Lung, and the great Fire Lord, Azula. Similarly, the people of the Earth Kingdom clung to their faith in the Avatar. Was it not his destiny to restore balance? Surely, he would not fail. Aang remained in Ba Sing Se with his companions. True to Tai Lung's words, the Fire Nation left them undisturbed. And so the boy Avatar gained something priceless: time. Time to master firebending. Under Iroh's watchful eye, he practiced relentlessly, often sparring with Zuko, fire against fire, until sweat poured down his face. Katara, Sokka, and Toph would linger nearby, watching him with a mixture of concern and hope. There was a fierce urgency in Iroh's teaching, which everyone could see. The wise old man feared for Aang's life. After a long day, as Aang collapsed to the ground, chest heaving, Iroh's voice came: "Rest for 2 hours, Avatar. Then we continue." Katara rushed to Aang's side. "He's been training non-stop for the past week. This isn't healthy. Tai Lung hasn't even given him a deadline, why push him so hard?" Iroh's eyes darkened. "Because every moment matters. His opponent is Tai Lung. And we don't know what Tai Lung is doing now. For all we know, he grows stronger by the day, inventing techniques or learning some strange evil art from somewhere." His words were enough to silence Katara. Recalling the Jade Masters was enough to instill terror in any of them. In their eyes, he was already a near unstoppable monster, and the thought of Tai Lung developing or learning something else, growing even stronger, was a true nightmare. Iroh's mind wandered back to the conversation he had shared with Tai Lung after the comet. The young warrior had spoken with terrifying certainty. He had not revealed his full intentions, but he had spoken of a new order. He had said, with unshakable conviction, that the current symbol of balance must fall. The Avatar must be destroyed. Iroh had argued then, anger and sorrow in his voice. That is chaos, not balance. But Tai Lung had dismissed him with a cold smile. What you call balance today was not the balance 10,000 years ago, and it will not be the balance 10,000 years from now. Balance is not eternal, it is ever-changing like anything else in life. The words haunted Iroh still. Whatever Tai Lung wanted, it would destroy the balance of the world as they know it. Even if he wanted to keep an open mind and accept change, to risk the balance of the world like this based on the intention of a single person was completely unacceptable. Moreover, Iroh suspected Tai Lung's goal was truly to crown the Fire Nation as the sole keeper of order in the world. If that was the case, then Tai Lung was about to make a terrible mistake, and the future would be darker than just the Fire Nation winning the war today. And so with what little he knew, the old general steeled himself for the worst possibilities, eyes falling upon the exhausted boy before him. The only hope of defeating Tai Lung and ending his madness was the Avatar. Azula sat lazily upon the Earth King's throne. Officers knelt before her one by one, delivering reports that all carried the same message: no sign of resistance, no hint of rebellion. Even a week after the fall of the Earth Kingdom, Ba Sing Se remained calm. And why wouldn't it? Azula mused, drumming her slender fingers against the arm of the throne. The city had been promised a strange kind of freedom, no interference in their daily lives, no forced occupation pressing down upon them. Their fate was left hanging on a single duel, the Avatar against Tai Lung. Why risk fighting when your supposed savior was preparing to do it in your place? Human nature, Azula thought with a faint curl of her lip, was pathetic. When spared immediate suffering, people were quick to cling to the illusion of safety. Why bother resisting if someone else could be the shield? Why risk their own comfort when faith in another's sacrifice would suffice? It made ruling easier, yes, but there was something distasteful about it too. To surrender one's fate so helplessly, it disgusted her. Her thoughts broke when a soldier entered, bowing low. "Fire Lord, Prince Zuko asks for an audience." Azula took a deep breath. "Let him in," she said coolly. The soldier bowed again and retreated. Moments later, Zuko stepped into the throne room, clad in simple Earth Kingdom garb. His scarred face pointed toward her, but his eyes flicked briefly to the row of Jade Masters standing like lifeless statues along the wall. There, among them, stood Ozai, his father. Azula smiled and said mockingly, "The heartless Zuko comes at last to visit his only little sister. What took you so long?" But Zuko did not rise to her words. His voice was low. "I always knew you were cruel and twisted, Azula. But to let your own father be treated like that, you've gone too far." Her smile slipped. "What are you here for, Zuko?" she asked, her tone suddenly flat. Zuko's fists tightened at his sides. "I want the truth. What really happened back home? Was your mission to capture me and Uncle another one of your lies? Why does it matter?" Azula replied, feigning indifference. "You've built yourself a life here, haven't you? You seem to be thriving." Zuko's voice grew sharp. "Thriving? I was banished from my home for over 2 years, hunted by you, and branded a traitor. Was this your plan all along?" Azula studied him, her amber eyes cool and calculating. At last, she spoke softly, "You've already decided what to believe, haven't you?" She paused, then continued, her words surprising even herself. "After I learned what a vile man our father truly was, I thought perhaps we could put aside the past and start anew. But then Ma told me you'd settled here, that you even had the luxury of a lover. I knew then it would be difficult to go back." She sighed, a rare crack in her composure. "You blame me for everything now that father is gone. Perhaps it's for the best that you don't return." Zuko glared. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Azula said, voice sharp as a knife, "that as Fire Lord, I order your banishment to continue. You are not permitted to come back and I strip you of your status as a prince." For a moment, silence hung between them. Zuko's fists trembled, but he turned without a word, striding for the doors. "I truly hope you find a fulfilling life," Azula called after him, her voice softer. "And, for what it's worth, I am sorry, Zuko." Zuko halted, his shoulders stiffening. He did not turn back. He walked on, disappearing beyond the doors. From the side entrance, Tai Li slipped in, her light steps making no sound until she spoke. "You were too heartless. You could have explained yourself to him." Azula leaned back against the throne, her gaze lingering on the empty doorway. "He's conflicted, angry, and with no one else to blame. He's placing it all on me now. Better he stay away and forget than stay nearby and let his hate fester. And he has a lover here now after all. Maybe one day, he will forget and forgive, then I can invite him back." Tai Li's face fell. Poor Mai. She insisted on leaving Ba Sing Se when she heard that. It was unfortunate, Azula admitted, her tone steady, though something flickered in her eyes. But she will recover. Tai Li nodded slowly, then sighed. Feels lonely now. Just the two of us. My preparing for Tai Lung's battle, Tai Lung himself went home with his father. Azula's lips curved into a smile. Yes. Thank you for staying, Tai Li. I'll admit, I wouldn't be comfortable here alone. I'd be fearing for my life. Tai Li grinned brightly. That's what friends are for. And let's be honest, Azula, no one around here can threaten your life. You'd just be bored out of your mind. A laugh, light and genuine, escaped Azula's lips. The relative peace in Ba Sing Se and the rest of the world lingered for weeks. The city, though conquered, carried on with its life under the Fire Nation's shadow, as though the people had accepted that their fate no longer lay in their own hands. For Aang, that strange stillness brought both burden and comfort. He was growing stronger and more capable under Iroha's teaching, his fire bending more controlled, and his breathing steadier with each passing day. And despite the grueling hours of training, there were rare moments when he allowed himself to imagine that perhaps the world could find peace without another battle. He dreamed, if only for a heartbeat, that Tai Lung might simply step aside and the Fire Nation would retreat, their hunger for conquest finally sated. But reality arrived sooner than he wished. Visitors from the North Water tribe came to Ba Sing Se that morning. At their head walked Chief Arnook, flanked by a handful of guards. The moment they arrived, Arnook asked to see the Avatar, and the request reached Aang before the morning sun had risen high. The Avatar and his companions gathered quickly in one of the Earth Kingdom's smaller halls, now repurposed for their use. Arnook entered with a steady stride, his eyes taking in each of them in turn. I am glad to see you are all safe after the fall of Ba Sing Se, Arnook said gravely. I admit, the news came as a shock. Aang shifted uneasily, guilt tugging at him as he replied, we tried to defend the city, but in the end, the Fire Nation was too powerful. With Sozon's comet in the sky, their firebending was unstoppable. Arnook nodded in quiet understanding. I can imagine it. If Agna Kele were to be attacked during the comet, I have no doubt our walls would have fallen in a single day. His gaze sharpened, and he asked, how is your preparation for your duel with Tai Lung? The question startled Aang. Beside him, Katara leaned forward in alarm. You already knew about that? The rumors are traveling too fast. Arnook shook his head. No rumor brought us here. On the day prior to the comet, a spirit fox appeared in our palace carrying a letter. The message was peculiar, to say the least. It told us Ba Sing Se had fallen, and that the Avatar would face Tai Lung in single combat, 2 months hence, at the Wulong Forest. The word struck the group like a thunderclap. Arnook, however, continued steadily. The letter asked that we bring a group of worthy individuals to witness this battle. It promised that no harm would come to us during the 2 months of waiting. More than that, it explained that the fate of the world would be decided by your duel. At first, I was suspicious. We all were. Yet we sent letters to our contacts in the Earth Kingdom, and each reply confirmed the same. Silence fell over the room until Arnook broke it once more. So here we are. We came to meet with you, to see for ourselves your state of mind, with less than a month left until the duel. We stand behind you, Avatar, and wish you a swift victory. We also came to meet with Fire Lord Azula. She will explain the changes that will follow, depending on whether Tai Lung triumphs, or you do. At that, Iroh, who had listened quietly until then, spoke. If I may, Chief Arnook, you said you confirmed the news and the letter before you journeyed here. How, exactly, did you know the time and the place of this battle? Arnook raised a brow at the question. From the letter itself, as I said. And from the fact that every village and town we passed along the way was already speaking of it. They all know about the duel for peace. Iroh's eyes narrowed as though he were trying to solve a puzzle. Chief Arnook, who had been watching, glanced from him to the uneasy faces around the room. "What is wrong?" Arnook asked at last, suspicion filling his mind. It was Sokka who answered first. "We agreed to that duel, sure, but there was no mention of a time or a place. And another thing, the challenge to Tai Lung was on the day of the comet, not before." "But you're saying you were informed of it the day prior to that?" Arnook's brow furrowed. His lips tightened as he processed the words, but it was Iroh who spoke next, his voice low and grave. "They were aiming for this from the start," Iroh said. "This duel was never truly yours to choose, Avatar. Even if no one had spoken up that day, they would have arranged it themselves." Toph scowled. "But why? What's the point of all this drama? Tai Lung could have squashed us like bugs back on the day of the comet. And if he really wanted some fancy legendary duel, he could challenge Aang any day now." Iroh's gaze grew heavy. "Because they do not want to simply defeat the Avatar. They want to destroy him as a symbol. They want the world to watch him stand tall, at the height of his power, and then fall to the Fire Nation. If the Avatar is defeated at his full power in a fair one-on-one battle, every last will to resist will crumble with him." A shadow passed over the room at his words. Zuko, who had sat in silence until now, finally raised his voice. "This way of thinking, of manipulating everything to send a message, it reeks of Azula. She's the one pulling the strings." Arnook's frown deepened. He turned to Aang, his voice firm but troubled. "Avatar Aang, how prepared are you? The Fire Nation may stoop to tricks. And the outcome of this duel, make no mistake, will decide the future of us all." Aang straightened, drawing in a steady breath. "I've mastered all 4 elements now," he said, his voice tinged with unease. "I'm still training, still learning how to duel better, but I'm ready." Arnook gave a solemn nod. "But," Sokka cut in, unable to contain himself, "aren't they worried the Avatar won't even show up? I mean, they didn't tell us the date. Clearly they were planning to spring it at the last moment." Iroh shook his head gravely. "Not showing up would be as disastrous as losing. The entire world already knows of this duel. They've invited witnesses, perhaps even the common folk. If the Avatar does not appear before them, their faith will shatter." Aang's hands clenched into fists. His voice, quiet but firm, "I won't let their plan work. I'll face Tai Lung. I'll defeat him. I'll bring peace." Iroh inclined his head, though his eyes still carried unease. "My concern lies not in the duel itself, but in the spirit fox that carried the letter." "A spirit serving Tai Lung, why would that be?" The room went silent. Nobody had an answer. "Maybe," Sokka began, breaking the silence with a hesitant tone. "Maybe he's got a pet spirit?" Iroh shook his head. "No, I don't believe it is that simple. What I fear is Tai Lung's growing connection to the spirit world. He has already entered the spirit world. He learned the Jade evil art from there. This and the fox spirit show he had ties to the spirit world now and is actively maintaining and using them." Katara's voice broke in, thoughtful and sharp. "You said it was a fox. Could it be connected to Wan Shirtong? The spirit of the library?" Sokka's eyes widened. "Yeah, if Tai Lung learned that Jade stuff from the library, maybe he struck some kind of deal with Wan Shirtong. But if that's the case..." His words slowed as a cold realization crept into them. What else did he learn from that place? None of them dared to imagine the answer. Sokka, not satisfied, spoke again. "So they want to destroy the Avatar as a symbol, but what are they going to put in its place? Are they planning to make Tai Lung some sort of replacement while the Fire Nation turns the whole world into its property? If that's their grand plan, then maybe the idea of Tai Lung being the Fire Avatar has gone straight to his head." At first, everyone simply stared at him. It wasn't uncommon for Sokka's theories to be met with blank looks. But this time, Aang's face changed. His gray eyes clouded over with a dawning horror, and when he spoke, his voice was so soft it was almost a whisper. No. Everyone turned toward him at once. Aang swallowed hard. Vatu, he said, Tai Lung met with Vatu. Sokka's right, Tai Lung's plan might be to merge with Vatu. To become a new avatar. A dark, twisted avatar, one who could only bend fire. Chief Arnook stiffened. His face was confused, almost disbelieving. He didn't know who Vatu is, but the expressions around him told him more than words could. Katara's voice trembled as she asked, could it be, he already merged with Vatu? Aang shook his head quickly, though his voice was grave. No. Rava told me the world itself would begin to change if Vatu was freed. Darkness and chaos would spread across the land, and every spirit would feel it. That hasn't happened yet. And Tai Lung can't do it on his own. The spirit portal is closed, which means he can't enter with his physical body to free Vatu. Only the avatar can open the portal. And even if he can enter the spirit world with his spirit, the other spirits would never help him to free Vatu. They know what would happen if he was freed. Sokka's eyes widened and said, now you say that. He must have been lying about joining hands with Vatu. He couldn't do that in the first place. Toph asked, what if he uses that creepy jade art to enslave you, Twinkle Toes? Wouldn't that mean he could open the portal through you? A hush fell over the chamber. No one answered. They didn't need to. In that single, unthinkable possibility, they understood it all, Tai Lung's goal, Azula's schemes, and the true weight of the duel. If Aang fell, it wouldn't just be the Avatar who would be lost. It would mean the return of Vatu and the end of their world. Tai Lung and Azula had gone insane. As the day of the duel drew nearer, tension spread like wildfire across the world. In Ba Sing Se, Azula and Tai Li gave their final instructions to the Fire Nation officers who would maintain control of the vast city. Their orders were clear, peace was to remain, and discipline must be maintained. Yet even as they departed, the world was already holding its breath. For though the Fire Nation had conquered the Earth Kingdom, whispers swept across towns and villages alike that if the Avatar triumphed, the Fire Nation's armies would retreat, and the Earth Kingdom would rise free once more. Everywhere, talk of the impending battle stirred excitement, fear, and hope in equal measure. Across oceans and deserts, from the ice-cold halls of the Northern Water Tribe chief to the noble court scattered throughout the Earth Kingdom, the duel became the sole subject of conversation. Even the Fire Nation's admirals and generals could not disguise their curiosity. People from every walk of life, nobles, soldiers, farmers, merchants and others set their journeys toward the Wulong Forest, where destiny itself seemed to be waiting. The news had even reached Kyoshi Island. Many of the Kyoshi warriors, sworn defenders of their home, laid aside their duties, seized by the need to witness the clash between the Avatar and the strongest firebender to ever live. Ships departed their shores, carrying them to a battlefield where history will be written. Far from the gathering storm, in Shujing town, a different meeting was taking place. Shujing lay upon a small island to the east of the Fire Nation, closest to the Wulong Forest across the sea. The town had long served as a hub for naval supplies, a place where warships resupplied before venturing toward the Earth Kingdom. It was also home to the renowned sword master Piandao, a member of the White Lotus, who got defeated and turned into jade at the hands of Tai Lung. Here, in a modest inn tucked in the townhouses, Azula and Tai Li arrived to join Tai Lung, Admiral Lung, and the rest of Tai Lung's crew. When Azula entered, her golden eyes settled first upon Mai. So Mai, how was your trip around the Earth Kingdom? She asked. Mai, sitting idly on a wooden chair, exhaled. Boring, she replied with her usual flatness. The only thing I did was spread the news and try to encourage people to come witness it. Tai Li clasped her hands together brightly. I hope you gave them a smile while inviting them. Mai turned her blank stare toward Tai Li, unblinking and unamused. A faint silence followed. Then Tai Li laughed weakly, fiddling with her braid. Yes, that was stupid of me to say. You'd never do that. Amidst their exchange, Admiral Lung sat listening, his face breaking into a smile. He focused on Azula and spoke. I am most impressed by you, Fire Lord. Tai Lung told me of his intent to end the era of the Avatar and how you planned and orchestrated the rest. Azula's lips curved into a sharp smile. I did nothing impressive. I merely agree with Tai Lung's goal. But for his victory to mean anything, the world must see it, see the Avatar, at the height of his power, fall. The Avatar should have mastered all 4 elements by now, and if enough bear witness, none will be able to deny the truth of the new order. Admiral Lung's expression darkened with thought. I hope everything unfolds as the two of you planned. Tai Lung will face the Avatar at his supposed peak. This time he will be truly fighting the master of the 4 elements and the maintainer of world balance. Tai Lung is confident, Azula replied without hesitation. And so must we be. All that remains is to bear witness to the birth of the new order. Tai Li, a little restless, piped up while glancing around. So, where is Tai Lung? I haven't seen him since we arrived. Admiral Lung chuckled, the sound low and tinged with disbelief. He is writing scrolls to send to his spirit friend. To Wan Sherdong? I thought he would wait on that till after the duel, Tai Li said with surprise. The Admiral replied with a wry smile, that is what surprises you. For me, I still find it difficult to believe that my son ventured into the spirit world and befriended an ancient, powerful spirit there. But, it seems the impossible is no longer impossible, not where Tai Lung is concerned. Tai Li laughed at that while Azula and Mai just smiled amused. While Tai Lung's side sat in relative calm, Aang could not rest. The more he and his friends mulled over the enemy's intentions, the grimmer he grew. Tai Lung's goal weighed heavily on his shoulders, every hour sharpening the dreadful truth. This was not merely a battle to decide the fate of nations, but one to decide the nature of the world. Aang threw himself into his training with a fervor his companions had never seen before. His bending mastery of all 4 elements had been pushed to new heights, and yet his heart still pounded with unease. It was on the very day Azula and Tai Li departed from Ba Sing Se that something most unexpected occurred. Aang was mid-training session, sweat dripping from his brow as he bent a spiraling column of air around him, when a voice rang across the courtyard, cheerful, old, and one he knew very well. I am glad to see you are well, and training hard. Aang froze. His hands faltered, the wind dissolved, and he spun toward the sound. Standing there, a crooked grin plastered across his wrinkled face, was King Bumi. And behind him stood the members of the White Lotus. Aang's eyes widened. His chest lurched. With a cry he darted forward, flinging his arms around Bumi. You're okay. Bumi laughed, patting Aang's back with unexpected gentleness. Yes, I'm perfectly fine. Tai Lung didn't harm us at all. To be honest, I don't even know how we arrived in Ba Sing Se. That fiery princess, or Fire Lord now, didn't explain it. She only told us that we were free to go and that we should come watch your fight against Tai Lung soon. The others came running. Master Pakku! Katara exclaimed, her voice breaking with relief. You're free. Iroh spread his arms warmly. I am glad to see you are safe, my friends. Bumi's crooked grin widened as he peered around at their bewildered faces. So, what did we miss? Sokka stepped forward, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. Don't you remember anything? Bumi's smile faltered, and he rubbed his chin. The last thing we recall, Tai Lung attacked us. Chi blocked us, one after another, then a green glow surrounded us. We've been asleep since then. A silence fell over the group. Even the air seemed to still. At last Sokka muttered, "You'll find it hard to believe what he did to you." And so, they told it all. What they were trained into, the invasion, Tai Lung's unfathomable plans and the weight of the duel that loomed ahead. When the tale was finished, Bumi and the other members of the White Lotus stood grave and pale, their usual composure and warmth replaced by heavy silence. Bumi bowed his head. His voice came low and weak. I never thought such a thing was possible. I am sorry, Aang. I insisted on trying to ambush him. Not only did it fail, but it made everything worse for you and for the world. His eyes slid to Iroh, filled with regret. You were right. We shouldn't have antagonized him. De-escalation and calling for peace, that was our best chance. Iroh sighed, his face shadowed with sorrow. What's done is done. And truth be told, after learning Tai Lung planned this duel with Aang all along, I fear peace was never an option. Bumi turned back to Aang. His old eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, now shone with rare earnestness. You are up against a difficult opponent, Aang. But I know you will triumph. You are the Avatar. With all 4 elements at your command, no matter how strong Tai Lung is, you are still the strongest. Aang straightened, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes determined. I will not let him win, he said. No matter the cost. Bumi smiled his crooked smile again. Then we, the White Lotus, shall bear witness to your victory. But we should be on our way. After all, not everyone has a flying bison at their disposal. There was laughter at that, short, faint, but genuine. Iroh, are you coming with us? Pakku asked. Iroh nodded and said, yes, I have nothing else to teach the Avatar. Aang spoke up, thanks for all the help. Iroh smiled. It was my duty and I enjoyed teaching you. I am looking forward to your victory. Aang stood watching as Bumi, Iroh, and the others departed. Aang drew in a slow breath. Their arrival, their faith in him, had renewed him and steeled his convictions. The fear still lingered, yes, but so did determination. The world was waiting. And Aang could not, would not, let it down. He is going to defeat Tai Lung and bring true peace at last. The Wulong Forest was unlike any other place in the Earth Kingdom. Situated on the far western coast, the land stretched endlessly into towering stone columns, hundreds upon hundreds of them rising into the sky like giant trees made of rocks, hence the name. Between those colossal pillars ran winding streams of water, weaving intersected paths as if nature itself had etched veins into the earth. Atop one of these rock columns, far above the paths below, Tai Lung stood in silence. His arms folded, he seemed an unmoving statue against the backdrop of stone and sea. Gone was his Fire Nation armor, instead he wore simple civilian clothes. His golden eyes, sharp and steady, drifted eastward. There, at the horizon, a vast cliff stretched wide, running in parallel to the forest of rocks below. And along that cliff, the audience gathered from every corner of the Earth Kingdom, from the icy waters of the north to the Isles of Flame in the Fire Nation. They had come, thousands gathered at the stony edge of the Wulong Forest, their faces alight with curiosity, dread, or expectation. Nobles and generals, chieftains and peasants alike, their forms darkened by distance, yet countless eyes were fixed on the columns. The duel had drawn them from every corner of the world. Everything was in place. All that remained was the Avatar. Yet among them, one thing was clear, nearly half bore the red and black of the Fire Nation. And at their head, regal and composed, stood Fire Lord Azula. Flanked on either side by her companions, Mai and Ty Lee. Azula carried herself with a poise that left no doubt who commanded these people. Beside her stood Admiral Lung, his eyes trained at his son's figure in the distance. It was then that Suki, leading her Kyoshi warriors in their green uniforms and unique face makeup, caught sight of the three girls. The sight made her hesitate, but only for a breath before leading her group toward them. Ty Lee was the first to spot them. With a delighted squeal, she bounded forward, closing the distance in a heartbeat, and threw her arms around Suki and the two nearest Kyoshi warriors in one enormous hug. "It's been forever." Ty Lee chirped, beaming at them as though this were a festival rather than the eve of a duel. "How have you been? I didn't expect to see you here." Suki smiled, her eyes never leaving Ty Lee's. "The news of this battle reached even our island. We came to witness it, the true Avatar against the Fire Avatar." Ty Lee leaned back with a grin, her eyes sparkling. "Ty will win. No doubt about it. Suki's lips curved faintly, though the confidence in her tone didn't falter. Not to break your hopes, but the Avatar has supposedly mastered all 4 elements. That means his strength is now on par with Avatar Kyoshi. So? Tai Li tilted her head, almost playfully. Tai is still stronger. Suki straightened, her jaw tightening. Avatar Kyoshi is invincible. Because Tai wasn't born during her era, Tai Li replied without hesitation, her voice so sure that even the other Kyoshi warriors glanced uneasily at one another. At that moment, Azula and Mai drifted closer, the Fire Lord's sharp eyes lingering on Suki. Nice to see you are all doing well, Azula said coolly. Suki gave an acknowledging nod. Fire Lord Azula. I didn't think you'd become Fire Lord so quickly. Azula arched her brow, amused. You thought I would become the Fire Lord? Suki nodded. When you eventually defeat your father, yes. I just didn't think it would be this soon. Azula gave a soft shrug, her tone as casual as her words were sharp. Tai Lung was furious with my dear father. That hastened the process. One of the Kyoshi girls behind Suki turned to point toward the rear, where a group of chained men stood under heavy guard of Fire Nation soldiers. What's with them? She asked. Mai's expression hardly shifted as she answered. The Earth King and his high officers. We brought them here to bear witness. Suki frowned, her voice hardening. You brought them chained? Azula's eyes flicked to her and answered as a matter of fact. They are prisoners of war after all. Tai Li added brightly, though her tone carried an uncharacteristic edge, they kidnapped Tai's father and left him in an underground prison for weeks. Think of it as their punishment. The Kyoshi warriors exchanged glances. But in truth, none of them felt sympathy for the Earth King. If anything, their loyalties leaned toward Tai Lung. Slowly, Suki and the others nodded. Azula turned her head eastward. The faintest smile touched her lips. And here comes our guest of honor. All eyes followed her gaze. High above, cutting through the pale sky, a white shape loomed, the Avatar's bison. Gasps rose from the crowd as Appa's mighty tail stirred the air, carrying him closer and closer to the Wulong forest. As the beast drew near, a smaller figure leapt from his back. Glider open, Aang soared forward, heading straight for the lone column where Tai Lung waited. Meanwhile, Appa descended with heavy grace, circling toward the cliff edge where the White Lotus members had gathered in solemn anticipation. The Battle of Legends was about to begin. Tai Lung did not stir, his arms still folded, his stance still. Time passed in absolute silence, save for the wind sighing between the stone towers. Then, at last, Aang's flying bison appeared in the distance, followed by the Avatar soaring alone, leaving his friends behind, flying him. Tai Lung's eyes narrowed as Aang descended onto a rocky column opposite him. Slowly, he unfolded his arms. You sure took your sweet time, Tai Lung said lazily, his voice carrying over the gulf of stone and air. For a moment I wondered if you would run. Aang's face was set, his voice firm. I will never run. I will put a stop to your plans. Tai Lung's lips curved into a smile. That's the spirit. Fight me with everything you have. But Aang hesitated, taking a deep breath. Before we start. Can I ask you a question? Go on, Tai Lung replied, amused. Aang's grip tightened on his staff. Why do you want to replace me? To replace the Avatar? For the first time, Tai Lung's smile thinned. His tone was calm, almost thoughtful. The Avatar, the bridge between humans and spirits, master of 4 elements, keeper of balance. I think your creation was a mistake. One broke the bond between Rava and Vatu, sealed Vatu, and crowned himself Lord of Order with Rava's aid. Balance? No. An imbalance disguised as peace. Aang's eyes widened, but he stood his ground. The Avatar, my past lives, always tried to make the world better, to keep balance. Some may have made mistakes, but their intent was good. And even if you claim the Avatar isn't a force of good for the world, freeing Vatou will bring only darkness and destruction. Tai Lung's brow arched. I am indeed thinking of freeing Vatou. But I highly doubt you know what I plan to do with his power, and I have no intention to explain it at this point. I know you and the world would refuse my words and maybe call me a lunatic or the enemy of peace. Aang's knuckles whitened on his staff. It doesn't matter what you're planning. I will stop you. Tai Lung's grin returned, confident and certain. Good, our conversation ends here. He slid into his stance, feet braced, shoulders set. Aang mirrored him, staff gleaming faintly in the sun. And then Tai Lung struck. His fist snapped forward, and an explosion of blue fire roared across the space, immense and searing. Aang slammed his staff to the stone. A great wall of wind surged forward, pressing against the flame. For a moment it held, rippling like a curtain in a storm, then the fire pressed harder, forcing its way through. Seeing this, Aang quickly crouched low, then leapt back into a flip. A crack echoed as a chunk of the stone column tore free, clinging to his legs as he spun. With a powerful kick, Aang flew backward while launching it forward, boulder meeting flame. The impact burst in a violent explosion, rock shattering to dust in the fiery blast. He landed lightly on a second column, his focus on the cloud of dust searching for Tai Lung. But Tai Lung was already on the move. The dust had barely cleared before his form emerged above it, soaring high, fist drawn back in punching motion. The next moment, another torrent of fire erupted toward Aang. This time, Aang decided to fight it back with fire bending. His own orange flame flared and surged from his palm to meet Tai Lung's. The two streams collided mid-air. For a brief, blinding instant, fire met fire. Then Tai Lung's blue flame crashed through the orange, devouring it, forcing it back. Aang's eyes widened. He dropped his staff, throwing his second hand forward. Another jet of flame burst from his palm, joining the first, desperately trying to stop the attack. It wasn't enough to overcome Tai Lung's, but it was enough to shift the tide of flame, angling the inferno just enough to roar past him, scorching the stone instead of flesh. Aang breathed a sigh of relief before looking at Tai Lung, who landed on a nearby column with a confident smile. Aang knew this was going to be a difficult battle. Tai Lung's golden eyes never left the Avatar, gleaming with a predator's hunger. I was right, he said, voice low and full of certainty. With every element you master, your chi grows stronger. Your chi is much greater than before, at least a few times. It makes me wonder. His smile widened, dangerous. How strong your Avatar state must be now. Aang said nothing. He only stared, chest rising and falling with measured breaths, every muscle taut, waiting for Tai Lung to make the next move. Tai Lung did not mind his silence. He lunged forward, both arms stabbing out like spears. Fire erupted from his fists. It was more powerful than before, a searing tidal wave, a dozen times more massive than his attack earlier. Aang's eyes narrowed. He spread his arms wide, palms straining against the air before clenching his fists with all his might. In a grinding loud rock of stone, two enormous rock columns tore themselves from the earth at his sides. He quickly brought his fists together, and with them, the two columns smashed together before him, fusing into a single towering wall. The inferno slammed into the rock face, firelight spilling around its edges, but the Avatar's barrier held. Drawing a steadying breath, Aang thrust both fists forward. The monolithic wall shuddered, then shot across the ground like a battering ram aimed straight at Tai Lung. Seeing the incoming massive rock, Tai Lung soared aloft in an instant, a trail of fire flaring from his feet as he rose above the onrushing rock. Glancing down, he let loose another torrent of blazing fire, searing downward toward the Avatars. Aang's arms spun, wheeling in circles like a watermill. Below, the river surged upward in a towering column to meet the flames. At the same time, he inhaled sharply, then exhaled a gale of air following the path of water. The three elements collided mid-air, a blinding eruption of steam exploding outward and clouding the battlefield in a choking white veil. Aang stared at the fog, looking for traces of Tai Lung. The next moment, Aang's eyes widened as Tai Lung burst from the fog like an arrow, his fist ablaze with eerie blue fire. Aang leapt back just in time, the attack missing him by inches. Tai Lung's fist slammed into the column where Aang stood with a deafening crack. Jagged azure fissures spread outward in an instant, glowing like veins of lightning, before the entire stone burst apart from within, shattered utterly by the force. Still airborne, Aang swept one hand, summoning another pillar of water from below. With a second motion, he hurled it forward, a glistening serpent rushing toward Tai Lung as he fell. But Tai Lung merely flicked his arm upward. A roaring wall of fire surged from the ground upward to clash against the water. Steam hissed violently, flooding the air once again. Aang braced, alert for another sudden strike, but instead, a blazing sphere of blue flame tore through the fog, hurtling toward him. With a sharp motion, Aang thrust his palm forward. A piercing blast of air shot out, lancing the fireball. The orb ruptured in mid-flight with a thunderous crack, scattering sparks across the sky. Landing lightly upon a nearby column, Aang scanned the battlefield for his foe. But then, too late, he sensed the opponent. Tai Lung had used the mist and the fireball as nothing more than a distraction. From the right he came, silent as a stalking leopard, surging across the ground and up the stone. Aang spun, desperate, his fist igniting in a burst of fire as he lashed out, but Tai Lung caught the blow with an iron grip. With a savage yank, he dragged Aang forward, their faces inches apart. Then, with his other fist, he struck. The blow sank into Aang's gut. Pain exploded through him, the air leaving his lungs in a strangled gasp. His knees buckled, and he fell forward, gasping, while Tai Lung loomed above him, smiling coldly. "Avatar," Tai Lung's voice ran, "you can't beat me like this. Enter the Avatar state, and give it your all." Aang looked up, clutching his stomach, breathing shallowly and raggedly. His eyes burned with defiance. With a sudden jerk of his arm, he hurled a blast of fire toward Tai Lung, leaping back to a neighboring column in the same motion. Tai Lung swept the fire aside with an almost lazy move of his hand, letting the Avatar retreat and gather himself. His golden eyes glinted with anticipation. Aang staggered upright, his body trembling but his gaze fierce. He inhaled deeply, steadying his breath, then closed his eyes. For a long heartbeat there was silence, then his eyes snapped open, glowing white, the tattoos across his skin igniting with the same brilliance. The air itself howled, whipped into a storm around him. The ground shuddered. Dozens of towering rock columns cracked and tore themselves free of the earth, levitating in a wide circle before collapsing inward into dense, compact stones. They spun around Aang as though caught in an invisible orbit. From all around him, the water surged upward, curling to join the orbiting storm of earth. Flame burst from Aang's limbs, from his very mouth, twining itself into the cyclone of water and stone. His small frame hovered above the ground, suspended by the furious wind that tore at the surroundings, snapping stone and lifting dust in violent swirls. Tai Lung watched in silence without interruption. Tai Lung could feel the Avatar chi was much greater than when he faced him in Ba Sing Se during the drill invasion. It was almost as if he was someone else now. The wind roared louder, tearing rocks from their roots, cracking cliff sides. Even those watching from far off felt the ground shake and the wind blow. Many had seen the Avatar state before, but never like this. Aang raised a single hand. One of the orbiting stones shot forward with such speed it tore through the air like lightning, aimed straight for Tai Lung. Tai Lung twisted, avoiding the strike, and countered at once with a surging wave of fire from his fist. The rock slammed into the ground behind him, erupting with an explosion that rattled the forest floor. Tai Lung glanced back, eyes narrowing. If that had struck him, even he would not have escaped unscathed. But the Avatar didn't even flinch at his fire attack. Aang allowed the flames to engulf him fully. When the blaze dissipated, his glowing form emerged untouched, the shield of elements swirling tighter around him. Tai Lung's eyes widened slightly. Ordinary fire would never pierce the fourfold barrier that encased the boy. Then Aang spoke, and his voice was layered by hundreds of souls. Your arrogance ends here. I will not allow you to disturb the balance any longer. Tai Lung only smiled, sharp and amused. Talking is easy. The avatar surged forward with terrifying speed. Tai Lung leapt aside, springing from the rock just as the avatar crashed through it, shattering stone into dust. Flame erupted from his legs, propelling him into the air as he hurled a stream of fire backward. Through the cloud of rubble, the sphere of elements burst forth with the avatar still at the center. He swept his hand, and a tidal wave of water and boulders struck against the fire, smothering it in a violent clash. The small broken rocks turned into bullets charging toward Tai Lung. Tai Lung shot through the sky, dodging left and right as the avatar pursued. More rocks were fired like arrows from the orbit around the avatar, slamming into the air where Tai Lung had been moments before. The waters below churned upward, pillars of liquid lashing toward him. It was as though the world itself had risen to fight him. Stone, water, fire, and air bent to the avatar's wrath, attacking from every angle. Tai Lung twisted, rolled, and spun, but still the strikes came non-stop. Getting overwhelmed, Tai Lung chose to soar higher, blue fire bursting from his arms as well now to propel him faster, desperate to escape the storm behind him. But the avatar followed, relentlessly. At last, Tai Lung reached high into the sky. He wheeled around sharply, one hand outstretched. A flame erupted from his palm, spinning violently before condensing inward until it became a crackling, rotating sphere of pure blue fire, then hurled it down toward the avatar. The avatar halted mid-flight. With both arms raised, Aang summoned rock and water alike, a shield of mountain-sized proportions forming before him. Water turned to ice, fusing with jagged stone until it loomed vast as a fortress wall. The blue fireball struck. A deafening explosion shocked the world. A great eruption of blow fire filled the world as the shield fractured at once, cracking from within before crumbling into avalanches of stone and ice. And along with it, a shock wave was unleashed that hurled Tai Lung back like a ragdoll, flames sputtering around him as he tumbled through the sky. With a fierce growl, he twisted, catching himself, and landed hard upon a towering stone column. His chest heaved as he looked on at the devastation he had wrought. Dust, fire, and shattered earth filled the air where the avatar had stood. Far from the heart of the battle, yet close enough to see and hear the crashes that split the air, the crowd stood spellbound. The Wulong Forest had become an arena, its towering rock columns shaking under the fury of two figures clashing. Most of the gathered masses held spyglasses, their hands trembling as they strained to follow the blur of motion. Roars of flame and waves of water echoed across the land, mingling with the shattering of rock. On the Fire Nation side, Azula narrowed her golden eyes, lowering her spyglass for a moment. "The Avatar is stronger than I remember," she murmured. "He is nothing like the one we faced months ago." Tai Li tilted her head. "Still. Tai's doing well. He's keeping the Avatar on the defensive." Mai gave a small, cold smirk as her eyes flicked toward the figures darting through steam and stone. "He brought the Avatar to his knees already. I'd say the fight's as good as over." But Azula shook her head. "No. For the plan to work, the Avatar needs to be defeated while in the Avatar state. Only then will it mean something. When he enters it, that is when the real fight begins." As though summoned by her words, the Avatar entered the Avatar state. From their vantage point, even separated by the distance, the watchers could feel it, the sudden shift in the world's rhythm as the boy rose up in the air in a storm. Rocks tore from the ground, torrents of water rose, fire spun into orbit, and the very wind howled. Tai Li's face paled. "Tai Lung, he's going to fight that?" Admiral Lung, standing rigid in his military uniform, inclined his head solemnly. "He expected this. You both knew the Avatar would be far stronger than the last time." Isn't that true, Fire Lord? Azula's eyes never left the storm of elements circling the glowing boy. She hesitated before answering, yes. Stronger. Definitely stronger than I thought. The crowd gasped collectively as the battle resumed. The speed of the combatants along with the rocks made it impossible to follow properly. They darted in and out of sight, explosions splitting the columns into rubble. The destruction grew so immense it was difficult to believe two benders alone were responsible. And yet one thing was clear, the roles had reversed. The Avatar pressed forward relentlessly, while Tai Lung twisted, dodged, and deflected. On the Fire Nation's side, many whispered prayers to Agni for Tai Lung's safety and his victory. On the opposite side of the cliff, where the Earth and Water nations had gathered in hope of the Avatar's triumph, the atmosphere was the opposite. Aang's losing, Katara said, her voice quivering, eyes wide as she clutched her brother's arm. Tai Lung is too strong for him. Calm down, Sokka replied quickly, he hasn't entered the Avatar state yet. Toph stomped her foot with a frustrated huff. Can't those two keep to the ground? All this flying around, I can't tell what's happening there. Sokka lifted his spyglass again, tracking the streaks of light. Aang's running and dodging, and Tai Lung's pressing the attack. Then Katara gasped, clutching her mouth. No! Toph tilted her head sharply, feeling through the earth. I felt that. That was a solid punch. They all fell silent as Tai Lung stepped back, giving Aang room. And then he finally entered the Avatar state. Katara's voice broke. Aang is forcing Tai Lung to run. Sokka muttered, I don't believe Tai Lung can last long against that. Toph's bare feet trembled on the ground, her blind eyes narrowing. Columns are snapping like twigs. Just feeling the destruction is enough to tell me how insane this fight is. Sokka's brow furrowed as a darker thought struck him. We're lucky Tai Lung is too full of himself. If he'd fought during Sozin's comet, Aang wouldn't have stood a chance. I can't even imagine how powerful he was back then. But his words were cut short. Tai Lung soared high above the battlefield, fire bursting from his limbs, and in his hand appeared a small, spinning orb of blue flame. Confusion rippled across the watchers. Such a tiny flame, what could it mean? Then the Avatar raised a shield of impossible size, merging jagged stone and frozen water into a mountain of ice and rock to meet the little ball. The collision came. The world shook. A deafening roar filled the skies as the explosion tore through everything, splitting rock and blasting wind so fierce the audience stumbled backward. The very earth trembled beneath their feet. Dust and smoke veiled the battlefield. Silence stretched across the watchers as their spyglasses lowered one by one. Horror etched every face. They could not comprehend what they had seen, how a single firebender's strike could cause such devastation. At the same time, Katara clutched her hands together, whispering desperately. The supporters of the Avatar feared the unthinkable. Was Aang still alive? The air still quivered from the thunderous blast Tai Lung had conjured. He himself stared, chest heaving, at the devastation that stretched before him. The compressed blue fire, his first attempt to mimic the Avatar's compressing of elements and the assassin from years ago, had brought unexpected results. The land trembled, boulders tumbled like dice, and even the sky seemed to pulse with the echo of its force. He hadn't expected the flames to swell into such destruction. A shiver passed through him as he realized, had he tried that at closer range, the explosion might have swallowed him whole. It would have been his end. But his musings were cut short. The stones beneath his feet groaned and shifted, tightening into jagged clamps that snared his legs. His golden eyes snapped forward to the wall of smoke and dust that cloaked the horizon. From the murk, a glow appeared, and then he saw the Avatar, still hovering inside his sphere of air, utterly untouched. Tai Lung snarled and smashed his fists against the stone shackles, fire bursting from his knuckles. Shards exploded outward, freeing him, and he leapt skyward again. But a sudden lash of water coiled round his leg like a serpent, yanking him violently sideways. he struck a column of rock with bone-jarring force. With a guttural roar, he blasted fire from his hands to soften the impact, but the crash still rattled his senses. His head spun, just long enough for the avatar to close the distance. Tai Lung's eyes narrowed. He drove his fist forward, but Aang's fist struck first. The avatar's blow erupted in a tempest of air, a gale so fierce it pinned Tai Lung against the stone like an insect on glass. The column shattered beneath him, sending rock splinters into the sky. Snarling, Tai Lung ignited his palms again, forcing his body upright. With one fluid movement, he conjured lightning. A blue-white fury hurtled toward the avatar. The strike connected, and for a heartbeat Tai Lung smirked. Then his triumph froze upon his face. Aang had not flinched. He lifted 2 fingers, and then the lightning was launched back at him faster and stronger. Tai Lung inhaled sharply, teeth clenched, as he allowed the lightning to strike him. He drew the lightning into his own body. Muscles convulsed as the current racked him, but he twisted, roared, and launched it back with even greater force. Once more the avatar caught it, his arms steady. But this time the lightning flung him backwards into a rock column, but still he held it, redirecting it again toward his foe. Tai Lung braced himself, chest tightening as he met the strike head-on. The lightning slammed into him, shoving him back toward another column, cracks spidering beneath his feet. He readied himself to release it again. All at once, the rocks spinning around the avatar shattered into hundreds of small fragments. The fragments streaked toward Tai Lung like arrows loosed from 1,000 bows. Tai Lung thrust the lightning outward into the hail of stone. The world lit with a cataclysmic blast. The air shook, ears rang, and dust swallowed everything. From the explosion, fragments still came, whistling through smoke. Tai Lung twisted, ducked, and flung fire from his palms to deflect them, but the barrage tore into him. His column split beneath his weight and crumbled, swallowing him into the haze. A hush fell. The avatar floated nearer, then with a wave from his hand, a powerful gust swept through, blowing the smoke aside. And there, Tai Lung was kneeling amidst the rubble, blood streaking his arms, chest, and brows. The once proud warrior's shoulders sagged. His breath came ragged. Aang landed not far from Tai Lung. His glowing eyes went back to normal as he exited the avatar state. He declared, "It is your loss. You are defeated, Tai Lung." Aang stood over the fallen warrior, his chest heaving, his voice steady but heavy with compassion as he said, "It is your loss. You are defeated, Tai Lung." For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then laughter. Low at first, but growing, echoing through the shattered valley. Tai Lung's laugh was almost mad, rumbling up from deep within his chest. Slowly, he pushed himself to his feet, blood streaking his body. "That was impressive," he said between breaths, straightening his back. "Right now, you are a lot stronger than Pa." His lips curled into a smirk. "I never expected you would be so much harder to deal with than that fat panda." Aang's frown deepened, his hands curling into fists. "Stay down," he warned, "you can't win this." But Tai Lung only smiled. "Is that what you think? You've opened your chakras, just like I did. I presume you met Guru Pathak, right?" Aang hesitated, frowning again. "What about him?" Tai Lung tilted his head slightly, his grin sharpening. "He did not tell you what I unlocked along with my chakras opening, did he?" Aang's brows knitted together. "I don't know what you are talking about, but he warned me you are a threat to the world's balance as we know it." Tai Lung nodded. "Yeah, he told me that as well, and I will admit, he is not entirely wrong. He did seem a little disturbed when he saw what his teaching produced. I guess he sees the world's balance as part of his responsibility now. But I fail to understand why he didn't warn you of what he feared." Aang said, "Where are you going with all of this? You have lost this fight." Tai Lung's smile faded into a look of still focus as he closed his eyes. For a moment, there was nothing, then a faint golden shimmer began to pulse beneath his skin. It flickered like sunlight through leaves, growing brighter and fiercer, until it spread through his entire body. The air trembled. The very wind seemed to turn toward him, pulled by an unseen force. Aang's eyes widened. The light swelled into a blinding torrent, wrapping Tai Lung in a radiant cocoon. The earth quaked underfoot, and for a moment Aang could only raise his arm to shield his eyes. When the light dimmed, what emerged no longer looked human. Before Aang stood a towering figure, a being with the unmistakable presence of a spirit. A gray and black tiger, tall and lean for his size yet rippling with power, with sleek muscles beneath shimmering fur. His eyes burned a brilliant gold, the irises ringed with predatory yellow. Two long teeth jutted upward from his lower jaw, and his whiskers, sharp and curved, formed the shape of a regal mustache. Around him shimmered a thin golden aura, almost breathing like a living golden flame. But it was his eyes that froze Aang in place. They were the eyes of a hunter, the gaze of a powerful beast, proud and utterly untamed. Aang took several steps back, his voice trembling. What are you?" When Tai Lung spoke, his voice was no longer his own. "When I unlocked my chakras," he said, "I reached something deeper, my true essence, the real me, you could say. You have your avatar state." He bared his teeth in a grin. "I have this. Let's call it, my animal state. This is my peak." The word sent a chill crawling down Aang's spine. Tai Lung's grin widened into something feral. "This is my first time fighting like this," he said, his chi halo flaring brighter. "You've earned the right to face me, at my strongest." Aang's eyes narrowed as he shifted into his stance, his breath steady, his limbs tensed. His gaze, however, betrayed a flicker of unease. Tai Lung chuckled darkly. "You think you can fight me like this?" He stomped the ground and the world obeyed. A massive slab of rock burst upward from the earth. With a second movement, he kicked it. The stone shot forward like a meteor, tearing the air apart as it hurtled toward Aang. Aang barely leapt aside in time, the rock exploding behind him in a shower of rubble. Tai Lung didn't pause. He slammed his fists into the ground, flinging shards and boulders into the sky, then met them midair with rapid, precise punches. Each strike sent a rock hurtling toward the avatar, arrows of stone whistling through the air. Aang twisted upward, bending the wind beneath him to carry him higher. He landed on the edge of one of the remaining columns, panting, his eyes darting down to his opponent. Tai Lung crouched and then sprang. In a single, graceful leap, he cleared the distance and landed atop the opposite column, face to face with the stunned avatar. "You do realize," Tai Lung said, his voice low and dangerous, "that I still have my fire bending, right?" He raised one paw. A flicker of blue ignited in his palm, swelling into a vivid, roaring flame that painted the sky into a mix of ghostly azure and gold. Aang stepped back, feeling the heat. "Enter the avatar state. Now!" Tai Lung roared. Aang flinched, then closed his eyes, his breath slowing. When he opened them again, they blazed pure white, the tattoos along his arms and forehead glowing to match. Tai Lung's grin sharpened into something near ecstatic. "Yes," he said softly, "face me with everything you have, Avatar." He spread his arms, the golden aura flaring behind him like the wings of some celestial beast. "I am Tai Lung, the snow leopard," he declared, his voice echoing across the battlefield, "and our battle shall be legendary." The moment Aang's eyes and tattoos blazed white, and air whipped into a furious cyclone around him as the elemental sphere formed around him again. Across from him, Tai Lung's golden aura pulsed brighter as a slow, dangerous smirk spread across his face. Then, without warning, he charged. The ground cracked beneath his first step. Aang, anticipating the attack, flew backward, his body engulfed by the winds that carried him aloft. The column he had stood upon shuddered, tore itself free of the earth, and soared into the air at his command. With a thrust of his hand, he flung it toward the onrushing Tai Lung. The massive rock hurtled forward, but Tai Lung didn't dodge. Instead, he lowered his shoulders, his body glowing gold and wreathed in faint blue flame, and crashed through the column with a deafening explosion. Shards of stone scattered like arrows, but he burst through the dust unscathed. Mid-leap, his foot struck one of the flying fragments, propelling him forward with even greater speed. Before Aang could react, Tai Lung was upon him. The Avatar had barely raised his hand to summon another attack when Tai Lung's paw, curled into a fist and burning with fire, struck the spinning sphere of elements. The impact was cataclysmic. The Avatar's sphere deformed, sending ripples of air and fire outward in waves that flattened nearby pillars. Aang was flung downward, crashing into the earth below with a thunderous crack that sent dust billowing in all directions. But the Avatar was quick to recover. He burst upward again, propelled by air bending, trying desperately to create distance. Yet Tai Lung was relentless. He bounded after him with terrifying speed, leaping between the broken columns and chunks of rock like a predator in pursuit. The ground splintered under each jump, but the leopard didn't slow. Aang turned midair and waved his hands. Waves of fire, wind, water and earth rained down toward his pursuer. Tai Lung vaulted over the first wave of attacks, landing not on his feet, but on all fours. A bestial roar tore through the battlefield as he began to run, claws digging into the shattered ground. He moved like an unleashed beast, swift, fluid, and impossibly fast. The world blurred around him. Aang sent another barrage of elemental fury, but Tai Lung's newfound speed turned him into a golden streak weaving through the attacks. Fire roared past him, water shattered against invisible walls of air, and stones splintered harmlessly behind him. The chase lasted less than half a minute. In that brief stretch of chaos, Tai Lung closed the distance. He launched himself skyward, soaring high above the Avatar. For a brief instant, he hung suspended in the air, a silhouette framed against the sphere of elements. Then he descended like a meteor. Fire exploded from his feet as he dove, the force enough to make the air scream. Before Aang could react, Tai Lung's fist struck once more, an earth-shaking blow that drove the Avatar into the ground with a resounding crash. The land quaked. Tai Lung didn't stop. He landed atop the crater, his golden aura blazing, and unleashed strike after strike, each blow ringing like thunder, each impact radiating heat and power. The ground split and burned beneath him, the shockwaves scattering fire and stone in every direction. Aang, trapped within his elemental shield, raised one glowing arm and unleashed a burst of wind. The gale struck Tai Lung with such force that even he was thrown backward, sliding several paces before steadying himself. The Avatar wasted no time. Hovering above the ruins, he broke the surrounding stones into countless fragments. With a flick of his wrist, they rained down upon Tai Lung in a storm of deadly projectiles. But Tai Lung didn't dodge. He stood tall, golden energy radiating from every limb. Each rock that neared him was shattered, deflected, or burned to cinders before it could do any damage. When the dust finally cleared, not a single wound marked his body. The Avatar's storm had failed. Tai Lung raised his head slowly, smirking at the Avatar, his eyes gleaming with fierce, untamed pride. He was now faster, stronger, and more resilient than any human could ever be. He was the perfect blend of physical power and elemental bending. The Avatar looked at Tai Lung, and for a brief uncertain heartbeat, he was about to attack Tai Lung. But then Aang's entire body shook violently as a groan tore from his throat, his face twisting with pain. Tai Lung tilted his head, one brow lifting in faint surprise at the sight before him. The boy's knees buckled, and Aang dropped to the ground, clutching his chest as though an invisible force were tearing him apart. "Is there a limit?" Tai Lung asked quietly, his tone curious rather than mocking, "on how long you can stay in the Avatar state?" Aang lifted his head, sweat glistening on his brow, and forced himself to stand. The tremor in his body did not fade, yet his voice came firm, no longer layered with the echoes of his past lives. "I will defeat you," he said, his tone carrying a solemn rare weight, "no matter the cost, even if my body breaks." As he stood, his chest began to glow. Strange markings etched themselves across his skin, spreading like living light. The marks of Rava. His whole being became consumed by a blinding azure radiance, the glowing lines burning white-hot, filling the field with the soundless hum of spirit power. Tai Lung watched this change with a flicker of interest behind his golden eyes. The air around the boy was thick and heavy, his chi spilling outward like the tide of a storming sea. It wasn't merely power now, it was presence. At this moment, he was more of a spirit than a human. Then, Aang let out a roar, a sound both his own and not his own, resonating with something vast and ancient. From his chest burst a lance of blue energy, tearing through the air toward Tai Lung. In an instant, Tai Lung sprang aside. The beam hissed past, and the earth behind him crumbled into dust, rock disintegrating beneath its touch. He landed lightly, eyes widening ever so slightly in admiration. Pure chi. He murmured. In raw power, I truly am no match for the spirit of light and order. But there was no time to dwell. Another beam screamed through the air. Tai Lung darted aside again, then lunged forward in a blur of motion. The avatar began to summon a third, but Tai Lung was already upon him. His fists blurred, one strike after another, raining down with terrible force. The ground beneath them split open, great cracks spidering outward. A blue shockwave burst from the clash, flinging dust and shattered stone in every direction. Tai Lung could feel it now, the raw chi acting as armor, each punch meeting resistance like striking the sea. Then Aang's mouth opened wide, and from his throat and eyes came another surge of light. Beams of blue chi burst forth, forcing Tai Lung to leap back and retreat, the air sizzling between them. The glowing body of the avatar swelled, growing larger and larger until a giant of pure, radiant chi stood where Aang had been. The light it gave off turned the mountains pale and ghostly. Tai Lung rose into the air, a trail of fire behind him, and landed upon a distant boulder, watching the avatar become a titan of pure chi. The colossal avatar turned its gaze toward him and roared. A massive beam of energy erupted from its chest, tearing the sky apart as it rushed toward him. Tai Lung's breath came calm and measured. His hands moved in wide, deliberate circles, his eyes closing briefly as the golden glow around him deepened. Before him, a great shimmering shield took shape, the form of a yin and yang symbol, spinning with serene balance. The blast struck it with a deafening boom. The shield trembled, the golden light flickering under the impossible pressure, yet it did not shatter. Then Tai Lung's eyes snapped open. He brought his paws together, recalling a memory, the quiet rhythm of Po's chi palms. His paws began to glow, brilliant and sure. Then he began thrusting his paws forward. With each thrust of his paws, massive golden palms appeared in the air, striking out toward the giant. The avatar was too vast, too ponderous to dodge. Each impact thundered across the plain, shaking the ground and forcing the giant back step by step. But though each strike drove him backward, none were strong enough to fell him. Tai Lung stopped striking and narrowed his eyes while the colossus began charging its power again, gathering energy into another devastating beam. He did not wait for it to block. The instant the blast erupted, he leapt upward, spiraling through the sky to dodge it, closing the distance with terrifying speed. His right fist clenched, glowing gold, and then, around that glow, bloomed a faint, flickering blue fire. This should end it all, he whispered. He punched forward. A gigantic spectral golden fist wreathed in blue flame burst from his strike and hurtled toward the avatar. The giant raised both arms to block, but too slow, too late. The glowing fist crashed against its head with cataclysmic force, the world flashing white as an explosion rang out like thunder from the heavens. When the light faded, the giant's head was gone. Its towering form knelt slowly, the brilliance dimming, breaking apart into drifting motes of spirit light that scattered on the wind. Tai Lung hovered in the silence that followed, breathing softly. Then, as the last remnants of Rava's light faded, he released a quiet sigh of relief. Tai Lung descended through the settling dust, the ground below fractured and scorched. His golden eyes swept slowly across the devastation, searching among the broken stone and shimmering remnants of chi, and there he found him. Aang lay motionless in a shallow crater, his body small and fragile against the ruins they caused in this battle. Tai Lung paused above him, hovering for a moment as if uncertain whether the boy lived or not. Then he caught sight of it, Aang's chest rising and falling, slow and steady. Alive. Barely. Unconscious, but alive. Tai Lung exhaled through his nose. He descended the rest of the way, landing silently beside him. For a long heartbeat, he only stared at the fallen avatar, at the faint blue line still flickering weakly along his skin. Then, without a word, Tai Lung bent down, lifted the boy onto his shoulder as one might lift a sack of grain, and turned his gaze eastward. The wind whipped around him as he rose once more into the air, carrying the avatar toward the distant cliffs where the audience, those who had borne witness to the battle, waited in fearful awe. When he descended, he landed upon the nearest rock column with the grace of a shadow, the force of his presence drawing every eye. Around him, the crowd shrank back instinctively, as though the very air around him burned. They had seen it all. Tai Lung, brought to his knees. Tai Lung, transformed into that monstrous, bestial form that defied all human shape. The avatar, towering like a god of light, and the land itself, torn apart and ruined in their wake, stood as eternal witness to the clash of two inhuman monsters. For a long, terrible moment, there was only silence. Then Tai Lung shifted. With a single motion, he took Aang from his shoulder and held him aloft by the neck, limp and dangling, like a captured fowl. His voice, when he spoke, rolled across the broken earth and crowd like thunder. The Avatar is defeated, he declared. And starting today, he is no longer the maintainer of balance in this world. His eyes glinted, gold and fierce. This is the birth of a new order. The words fell like a spell. All around, soldiers, leaders, and bending masters stared, pale-faced and trembling. Even those who had supported the Avatar did not move, did not breathe. His gaze swept over them, finally resting upon his father, Tai Li, and the others who stood nearest the front. Instead of smiling for his victory, their eyes were wide in astonishment. None among them had ever seen Tai Lung like this before. He had not needed to use his animal state in battle before today, the only other time he used it was to prove he came from another world to Wan Shi Tong. The world's new order, Tai Lung continued, his tone measured, shall be established today. He turned slightly, Fire Lord Azula will be responsible for explaining how things will proceed henceforth. He loosened his grip upon the boy's neck, shifting his hold instead to Aang's stomach so the Avatar hung limply in front of him. With his free hand, Tai Lung extended his fingers, catching the index finger of the arm that held Aang, a subtle movement, as though preparing for some ritual only he understood. His gaze flicked once more toward Azula. I will go to the spirit world, as we planned. I will return when I am finished with my work there. Make sure they understand how things will be going forward, he said. Azula blinked, her shock giving way to something sharper, composure and calculation. Slowly, the familiar confident smile curved her lips, and she inclined her head. I will, she said. Tai Lung's eyes narrowed slightly, satisfied. He raised his pink finger, holding it aloft in a delicate gesture that seemed almost out of place after such destruction. Then, very softly, so softly that only he could hear, he muttered a single word under his breath. Skadoosh. A blinding golden light exploded in all directions, and a golden mist began to spread all around. Tai Lung and the Avatar were nowhere to be seen. The people kept staring at the spot where they had stood, silent and unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Aang opened his eyes slowly, his skull pounding with pain as though 1,000 drums were beating inside it. The air around him shimmered with strange colors, neither day nor night, a realm suspended between both. For a fleeting second, he wondered if he was dreaming, until a thunderous explosion shattered the stillness. The ground trembled, and the sound ripped through the world like the breaking of the heavens. His eyes flew open. Memory struck him like lightning. The battle. Tai Lung. He stumbled upright, clutching his head, his breath ragged. All around stretched a barren plain. But far in the distance, stood a purple sphere. Aang's blood turned to ice. He knew this place. He had seen it before. This is the spirit world where Vato was sealed. Then came the sound. A slow voice behind him. So, it said softly, "You're already awake? I would have preferred to end this while you slept." Aang spun around. Tai Lung stood behind him, calm, upright, and once again in his human form. His fur and bestial features were gone. Yet there was something sharper in his eyes. But what seized Aang's attention wasn't Tai Lung. It was the being hovering beside him. A dark, swirling mass of red and black, moving like liquid shadow. Vato. Aang's breath caught in his throat. His gaze darted to the side, to where the ancient tree that once imprisoned the spirit of darkness and chaos had stood. Now, it was nothing but a jagged ruin. After 10,000 years, Vato said, his form rippling, "I am finally free, Rava, and there is nothing you can do about it." Aang's anger rose like fire. "You used me," he shouted, his voice echoing across the hollow sky. "You used me to open the portal and free Vato." Tai Lung raised an eyebrow, his tone infuriatingly calm. "The portal is still closed," he replied. "And I certainly didn't use you." But Aang wasn't listening. The fury boiling inside him reached its peak, his eyes began to glow, trying to enter the avatar state. Winds rose at his feet. Tai Lung moved before he could enter it completely. He crossed the space between them in a blur. His fists struck in rapid, precise bursts, every blow aimed at chi points and nerves. Pain exploded through Aang's body, his limbs stiffened, and his glow faltered. Within moments, he was on the ground again, gasping, his strength bleeding away. Tai Lung caught him by the back of the neck and forced him down, pressing him to his knees. His grip was unyielding. "Now," Tai Lung said quietly. "With pleasure," hissed Vato. From the dark spirit's form, tendrils of shadow unfurled and lunged toward Aang. They coiled around his head, and before he could scream, they plunged into his mouth, writhing as they went. Aang arched in agony, his body convulsing as the tendrils pulled, tugged, and tore, not at his flesh, but at his very soul. And then, Rava emerged. A radiant, white-blue light burst from within him, taking shape mid-air, her form trembling as Vato's darkness pulled her free. The connection between her and Aang broke like a snapped chain. Aang fell to the ground, choking, empty. His body felt hollow, his spirit half torn away. He looked up weakly as the two spirits, light and dark, clashed above, their energies spiraling, consuming, and biting into one another. He could feel it. The bond. The voices. The guidance. All gone. The avatar cycle ended. Tai Lung released him and stepped toward the battling spirits. His hands glowed an eerie green, and energy rippled through his palms. Slowly, deliberately, he began to weave the power outward, threads of emerald light spinning through the air, surrounding the two spirits. Rava screamed, her voice like a breaking crystal. "Stop, human. What are you doing?" Vato only laughed. "It's pointless, Rava. It is the end. Stop." Aang cried hoarsely, forcing himself to his knees. "Stop." He tried to run forward, every muscle screaming in protest. But before he could reach them, a vast shadow fell across him. A weight like a mountain slammed him to the ground. Aang looked up and his eyes widened in disbelief. Above him loomed Wan Shirtong, the great spirit owl, eyes full of cold wisdom. "Stay still, human," the spirit said, his voice low and resonant. Aang froze, powerless beneath the ancient spirit's talons. He could only watch as Tai Lung's green light wrapped tighter and tighter around Rava and Vato. The two spirits' forms began to twist and compress until they were gone. And in Tai Lung's palm lay a small jade pendant, perfectly round, glowing faintly. The stone took the shape of yin and yang. Tai Lung stared at it in silence for a moment. Fitting shape, he murmured. Considering their nature. He turned to Wan Shirtong, his face calm. It's over now. He stepped forward and extended his hand with the jade to Wan Shirtong. Wan Shirtong took it and tilted his head. How long will it last? 10,000 years, Tai Lung replied simply. The owl's feathers ruffled in approval. Then I will ensure it is safe. Without another word, Wan Shirtong spread his enormous wings and took to the skies, vanishing into the horizon. Tai Lung stood there for a long while, the silence settling once more over the spirit plane. Then, he turned his gaze to Aang. It's over now, he said, almost gently. You are no longer the Avatar. And there will be no more avatars. Aang lifted his head, his face pale and stricken. Why? He rasped. Why would you do this? Why plunge the world into chaos and darkness? Tai Lung smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. And who said I am doing that? He asked. Better still, who decided the Avatar is the source of balance and what the world needs? Rava is the spirit of light and order, Aang said, his voice trembling yet firm. The world needs her. Tai Lung's golden eyes locked on him. No, he said simply. It doesn't. Before Aang could speak again, Tai Lung strode forward. With easy motion, he seized the boy, flinging him over his shoulder as though he were a sack of potatoes. What are you doing? Aang shouted. What do you think? Tai Lung replied dryly, walking with a calmness that made Aang's panic feel louder than ever. We're leaving the spirit world. I'm taking you with me. Aang twisted, trying to wriggle free. Put me down. I will stay here. I'll save Rava. There is nothing to save, Tai Lung said, his tone unbothered, as though explaining a simple fact. She's just asleep. Even if you bring me back to the human world, Aang said through gritted teeth, his anger and desperation rising like fire, I'll find a way back. I'll come here again and save her. Tai Lung gave a low sigh, almost weary. You're a stubborn one, aren't you? He murmured. If you haven't realized it by now, I don't want to kill you and I'm not about to let you die because of my decision. Then free Rava, Aang said sharply. Tai Lung stopped walking. Slowly, he lifted Aang from his shoulder and placed him on the ground. For the balance and peace I seek, Tai Lung said quietly, Rava is a hindrance, and a harm to the world. You're wrong, Aang said stubbornly, his fists clenched at his sides. Tai Lung gave a small, humorless smile. Fine, he said. Then let me explain why Rava is harmful and why Wan, the first Avatar, made a terrible mistake. Aang said nothing. He stood still, chest heaving, his gray eyes fixed on Tai Lung. Deep inside, he wanted to believe Tai Lung was lying, but a part of him, an instinct, told him that Tai Lung believed every word he spoke. Tai Lung crossed his arms. Tell me, he said. What do you know about harmonic convergence? Aang swallowed, his mind searching through lessons and memories of past lives he could no longer reach. Harmonic convergence, he began carefully, is a supernatural phenomenon that happens once every 10,000 years. When the planets align, spiritual energy is greatly amplified, and the spirit portals at the north and south poles merge. An aura of spirit energy envelopes the earth. Tai Lung nodded slowly. Correct, he said. But what if I told you that the spirit energy shouldn't envelop the earth in the first place? Aang frowned. What are you talking about? What if I told you, he said, that the spirits were never meant to live among men? And that Rava, your great spirit of light, should never have walked the mortal world in the first place? Aang's heart skipped a beat. That's impossible, he whispered. But as Tai Lung turned his gaze upward, toward the pale, swirling sky, the look in his eyes was neither cruel nor mocking, only certain. Is it? He said softly. Then tell me, Aang. If light and dark were meant to coexist within balance, why did Rava sealing Vatu not break that balance? And if the darkness and chaos are sealed, why does the peace and balance never persist? Aang had no answer. Aang didn't answer. His eyes, wide and uncertain, merely stared at Tai Lung. Tai Lung smiled faintly, as though he had expected silence. There was no irritation in his tone when he finally spoke, only patience. Tens of thousands of years ago, Tai Lung began, the two worlds were separated. Spirits and humans didn't coexist. They simply lived in parallel worlds, never crossing, never interfering. He paced as he spoke, hands clasped behind his back. Only a few of the most ancient and powerful spirits could enter our world, and even then, only for a time. The Mother of Faces, the mightiest of them all, could touch our world but never linger. The moon and the ocean had to sacrifice their immortality and become mortal forms just to remain. Aang frowned deeply. But spirits lived among humans during Wan's era, he said. Tai Lung nodded slowly. Yes, that's true, and it was because of Vatu. 20,000 years ago, Vatu defeated Rava during the harmonic convergence and then tried something no spirit had ever done before. He used the convergence to open two permanent gateways between our worlds. Aang's breath caught. The two portals Wan closed. Exactly, said Tai Lung, spirits were never meant to walk our world, Aang. Vatu told me this himself, and Wan Shirtong, as well as the Mother of Faces, confirmed it. The spirits came here because of his actions. That was the beginning of the imbalance. Aang's brows furrowed as Tai Lung continued, his voice taking on a lecturing rhythm. 10,000 years later, when Wan and Rava merged during the next harmonic convergence, they closed the portals, sealing the boundary between the spirit and human realms. But if that were truly the end of it? He paused, tilting his head slightly. Why do some of the lesser spirits still cross over, even now, when they have no power of their own like the great and ancient spirits? Aang hesitated. His lips parted, but no words came. At last, he admitted softly, I don't know. Tai Lung's eyes gleamed. Then tell me, Aang, what is the bridge between the human world and the spirit world? Aang's expression faltered. The Avatar, he whispered. Correct. Tai Lung's voice was low and measured. The Avatar is the bridge not only because he carries both human and spirit essence, but because his existence draws the two worlds closer. Where the Avatar stands, the veil thins. Lesser spirits can slip through where you are, Aang. And that is why Rava cannot remain in our world. If natural order is to be restored, she must return to where she belongs. Aang remained silent for several breaths. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and conflicted. If what you said is true, then why did you free Vatu? Why imprison them both in jade? Tai Lung folded his arms, his eyes narrowing slightly. I asked you before, why doesn't peace and balance persist despite Rava's presence? He waited a moment, then continued, for conceptual spirits to affect our world, they must sacrifice their immortality. This is the law of the world that all spirits have to obey. Rava didn't do that, so her power had no effect in our world. Aang said nothing, only listened. In the spirit world, it is a different story. Spirits like Rava and Vatu influence other spirits simply by existing, Tai Lung said, his tone deepening, becoming almost solemn. When Wan sealed Vatu, the spirit world lost the source of the chaos, and when he chose to remain in the human world, the source of order was also lost. The two worlds stabilized somehow as neither light nor darkness held sway. And Rava, bound to the Avatar cycle, remained immortal through reincarnation. Her concept of order never truly influenced balance, and she merely turned into an enforcer through the Avatar. Tai Lung's gaze softened, almost pitying. I wanted to restore the natural balance to send Rava back to the spirit world. But if I did so while Vatu remained sealed, the spirit world itself would fall out of balance. So, I had to free him, and then imprison them both together. In that jade, they sleep, neither affecting the other spirits nor the world. Aang blinked, his voice shaking. So, you tricked Vatu? Tai Lung shook his head, the faintest shadow of a smile crossing his face. No. Vatu knew exactly what I intended. He helped me willingly. 10,000 years of isolation is torment even for a spirit of chaos. He agreed to help me seal them both again. Now they rest together, not aware of anything around them. They are merely in a deep sleep. To them, time is irrelevant. The rest of the ancient spirits, like Mother of Faces and Wan Shi Tong, will act as guardians of the two. Even you won't be allowed anywhere near Rava and Vatu. Aang was silent again for a few seconds before asking, what about the world's peace? Without the Avatar, how would the world stop wars? The 100-Year War continued because I wasn't there to stop it. Yes, it's because of the Avatar that the war never ended, but not in the way you think. Tai Lung answered. Aang frowned. What do you mean? Tai Lung replied with questions of his own. Do you really think the Fire Nation is strong enough to kill all the air nomads, conquer the Earth Kingdom, and threaten the water tribes on its own? You've seen their soldiers, Aang. The average Fire Nation soldier is not that different from an Earth Kingdom guard or a water tribe warrior. So tell me, how did the war go on for 100 years? How did the Fire Nation keep winning? Aang opened his mouth, but only managed a weak, I never thought about it before. Tai Lung gave a faint nod as if expecting the answer. I have traveled the world, he said. Wherever I went, the story was always the same. One day, the Avatar will return to bring back the balance. We trust the Avatar, master of all four elements, to stop the Fire Nation. That belief carried through an entire century. Aang's brows drew together as Tai Lung continued. The war continued because of the Avatar, Tai Lung said firmly. Because it's the Avatar's job to solve these problems, not the nation's or its people. That reliance is what made this war last so long. When the air nomads were attacked, the other nations stood by, watching, because they believed the Avatar would stop the Fire Nation. When the Fire Nation began invading the Earth Kingdom, the South Pole, and even the other Earth cities and lands stood watching again, waiting for the Avatar. That's wrong, Aang said, his voice rising, desperate to prove Tai Lung wrong. There's resistance. People who fight even without the Avatar. Tai Lung nodded. Yes, he agreed, but how many are they, truly? And when did they begin fighting? It took decades before the first spark of resistance appeared, and it was out of desperation that the Avatar was not coming back to save the day. Aang frowned, his fists clenching, clearly unwilling to accept it. Tai Lung looked at him with quiet intensity. Look at yourself, Aang. Why are you here? Because you brought me here. Aang snapped. Tai Lung inclined his head. And how did we reach this point? We declared to everyone I would face you and decide the fate of the world in a single duel, and everyone agreed. No one protested. No one felt wrong that their lives were being decided by the outcome of a fight between two individuals. Ba Sing Se showed no resistance or resentment toward the Fire Nation. Why antagonize the Fire Nation and risk trouble when someone will fix everything for us? We even noticed the flames of resistance began to quell across the Earth Kingdom after your return a year ago. Aang blinked, realizing the true meaning behind the strange actions in Ba Sing Se after the comet. Behind all of the Fire Nation recent actions and words. When I defeated you, Tai Lung continued, his voice low but clear, I brought you before hundreds, thousands even, of your supporters and supposed friends. Not one of them tried to stop me. The truth is, their faith in the Avatar is their greatest weakness. When you fell at the height of your power, it broke them. They lost all will to fight or resist, just as they did in the North Pole Siege and during the Drill Invasion. And when we return, you'll see, Azula will have everything done in the way we want, and no one will object. Their symbol of balance has fallen. It will take time before they wake up to their faults and stand on their own. Aang's shoulders slumped. His gaze fell to the ground. He didn't want to believe it, but he couldn't deny it either. And when they do wake up, he said softly, it'll be too late. The Fire Nation will already control everything. Tai Lung shook his head. No, he said simply. The Fire Nation will withdraw from most of the lands. We don't intend to continue occupying lands. Aang's head snapped up, his eyes wide in disbelief. What does that mean? Tai Lung's gaze softened, his voice steady and sure. I said it before, I want peace and balance. War, conquest, and occupation have no place in that vision. We intended to end the war even before Ba Sing Se fell, and our battle? It had no weight over the war. It is just a declaration of the end of an era, the era of the Avatar. The air between them grew still. Aang stared at Tai Lung, unable to tell if he was looking at a mad monster or a mad dreamer. And yet, deep down, a quiet, depressing understanding began to form. If everything said was true, then the balance Tai Lung sought might not be entirely wrong. The Fire Nation had won. There was no doubt about it. Their banners now flew all over the Earth Kingdom and no one dared to dream of removing them. They truly owned the land now. The Avatar, the last hope of the world, the one meant to restore balance, had fallen, never to rise again. The Battle of Wulong Forest would be remembered for centuries to come, stories of legend will be told from generation to generation, and it will be recorded by historians as the day the Avatar unleashed his might to its absolute limit. He had bent the four elements with a fury and grace that reshaped the Wulong Forest forever. The world was as if it cracked under his power. Yet it was not enough. At the end of the day, the Fire Nation's champion had prevailed. Tai Lung. A beast in human skin. During the battle, the world had seen what he truly was, a creature of raw, merciless power. They had watched him transform, watched him kill the Avatar with his own hands, before vanishing with Aang's body into the air like a spirit. Fire Lord Azula stood before the gathered nation soon after, her voice sharp as a blade and her golden eyes gleaming cruelly with their victory. She declared it to be the end, the Avatar was gone, and no new Avatar would ever be born. The age of the Avatar was over. The world had changed forever. And Tai Lung? He was out there, somewhere, carrying out an unknown mission for the Fire Nation, a monster in human form. Countless witnesses had seen the battle unfold. Soldiers, citizens, nobles, and benders of every kind all watched as the old world crumbled before their eyes. When they returned to their homelands, they carried the tale with them like a ghostly flame, spreading it from village to village, port to port. Within days, the entire world knew, the Avatar, the symbol of balance and hope, was gone forever. It was the end of an era, the end of the Avatar era. The rulers of the Earth Kingdom and the chieftains of the Water Tribe soon bent their knees. There was no point in resisting. The Fire Nation's might was unmatched, and now they had Tai Lung, the beast who had defeated the Avatar. Against such power, rebellion was nothing but a whisper against the storm. So, one by one, the leaders of the other nations sat before Fire Lord Azula. They listened as she spoke and they obeyed, for fear that their people might be next to face Tai Lung's wrath. A shadow of gloom and despair fell over every land, spreading like a sickness. But none suffered more than those who had once stood beside the Avatar. Katara wept. She sat in the corner of a tent, her head buried in her hands, tears streaming down her face in endless rivers. Beside her sat Sokka, silent, staring at the ground with hollow eyes. Even Toph, who rarely showed weakness, sat apart, her arms wrapped around her knees, her lips pressed in silence. When Iroh and Pakku entered the tent, the air was thick with grief. Iroh's face was drawn with sorrow, his gentle eyes dimmed, while Pakku's stern expression softened as he looked upon the broken trio. I understand your pain, Pakku said quietly, kneeling beside Katara. But for Aang's sake, you must rise from this state. You are only harming yourself. Katara shook her head, her voice breaking between sobs. I kept telling him he was the Avatar, that he could save the world. I pushed him to fight that monster. I told him it was his destiny to fight and win. Her tears fell faster. I knew Tai Lung was dangerous and terrifying, but I still pushed Aang into fighting him. Iroh sighed deeply, his voice heavy with regret. We all believed he would succeed, he said softly. He was the Avatar, after all. And Aang fought harder than any Avatar before him. He showed power that none of us had ever seen or heard of even in stories and legends, but Tai Lung surpassed him. None of us could have imagined how strong he truly was. Toph clenched her fists. So what now? She said bitterly. We just sit here and let the Fire Nation reshape the world to their will? Aang's sacrifice was in vain. Sokka's voice was low and heavy when he replied. What else can we do? Without Aang, there's no one left to restore balance. Fighting the Fire Nation isn't an option, not with Tai Lung out there. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Iroh broke the silence. Azula has given new orders, he said carefully. She has commanded all Fire Nation soldiers to return home. They are leaving the Earth Kingdom. The war is over. His words hung in the air like a spell. Sokka blinked. Leaving, he repeated, disbelief etched across his face. What do you mean, they're leaving? Iroh nodded gravely. Azula says she wishes to restore peace and balance. She no longer intends to occupy the Earth Kingdom. Every Fire Nation base will be dismantled. Katara looked up through her tears. Why? She asked, her voice raw and trembling. They killed Aang to conquer the world and now you're telling me they want peace? Iroh exhaled slowly. They planned this all along, he said. I suspect the attack on Ba Sing Se was only to draw Aang out, to bring him into that final duel. They wanted the Avatar gone, but not in secret. They wanted the world to see his end, to end the Avatar's era before all eyes. Sokka frowned. But, why? It was Pakku who answered. The Fire Nation will leave the Earth Kingdom, he said grimly. But the Western lands, they will no longer belong to the Earth Kingdom. Azula and Tai Lung intend to create something new there, a nation made of all peoples, from all corners of the world. They plan to call it the Nation of Peace. At the shocking news, Sokka's mouth fell open. Katara froze. Even Toph turned her head toward him despite being blind. Pakku's voice grew colder. This new nation will stand apart, none of the nations will have any sway over this new nation. Its single job will be to oversee the balance of the world and ensure peace is maintained. It is a replacement for the Avatar. His words were met with grief, disbelief and quiet rage that none of them yet knew what to do with. Sokka broke the silence first. His voice was almost trembling. This is ridiculous, he said. No one can replace the Avatar. And even if they build this nation, the other nations won't just go and live there. That simply won't work. Iroh shook his head and sighed deeply. They already planned for that, he said softly. The western lands of the Earth Kingdom have dozens of settlements where Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom people have lived side by side. Many of their children. Well, they are of both nations. One child may bend fire, the other earth. Toph frowned. So what? The plan, Iroh went on, is to make these settlements the foundation of a new nation. And since many of these people have long suffered the prejudice of being halves, they will welcome a place where such things no longer matter. And the name being the Nation of Peace will only encourage them. His words met with silence, so he continued to the other issue. They have already begun construction of a place they call the Jade Palace, said Iroh. It will train masters from all nations, or rather, from none. Like the White Lotus, it will not care about the origin of the person or if he was a bender or not. The masters of the Jade Palace will ensure peace and balance without needing an avatar. Tai Lung plans to teach there. Anyone who wishes to join must abandon their allegiance to any nation. And if they are found serving the interests of their homeland, they will be punished. Pakku, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke. With Tai Lung teaching there, he said, many will follow. People admire power, even when they fear it. I am afraid this new nation's rise will be unstoppable. Katara's fists clenched, tears of anger rising to her eyes. They killed Aang, just so they could replace him, she whispered, trembling. Just for that? Iroha's eyes softened with something close to pity, but before he could respond, he reached into his robes and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. We also received a letter, he said carefully. From Azula. She commands the three of you along with Appa and Momo to travel to the Jade Palace. The word struck like thunder. Why? Sokka demanded suspiciously. What does she want with us? We're not going anywhere. Katara snapped. Iroh looked at her with deep regret. I do not know what they intend, he said. But I do not believe they mean you harm. You pose no threat to them now. None of us do. Pakku's voice was firm, though there was sorrow beneath it. As much as I hate to say this, you should go, he said. We are in no position to refuse them. Everyone has surrendered. Resistance will only bring you pain. Katara stared into the fire, her lips trembling. And forget what they did to Aang, she said, her voice cracking. Pakku looked down at her, his old eyes heavy with compassion. Live today, he said quietly. And have your revenge tomorrow. You must wait for your chance. For a long moment, there was silence again. Katara buried her face in her hands and wept softly. Beside her, Sokka and Toph sat in silence, their fists clenched so tightly that their knuckles turned white. A small wooden boat drifted quietly in the sea north of the Earth Kingdom. It carried two figures heading straight to the western coast of the Earth Kingdom. Luckily for the two, the sea was calm with no signs of storms. Aang sat, arms folded tightly across his chest, his gray eyes burning with frustration as he glared at the man opposite him. If Sokka were around, he would have definitely said Aang was acting like Katara, but that didn't matter to Aang at the moment. Across from him sat Tai Lung near the stern, who seemed entirely unmoved by the young monk's stare. The silence stretched, filled only by the creak of the sail and the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. Finally, after what felt like hours, Aang could hold his words no longer. After all your talk about peace and balance, he burst out, the moment you walked into the Northern Water Tribe city, you scared them into giving you clothes and a boat. Tai Lung didn't even look at him. No, he said mildly, I simply showed them my blue fire and asked for some help. They were quite eager to lend it and see me go home. Aang's eye twitched. They were terrified of you. They begged you to spare their children. A common misunderstanding, Tai Lung replied, still calm, when you see someone from the Fire Nation. They were afraid of you, not the Fire Nation. Aang snapped. You can't pretend you don't know that. Tai Lung finally turned his gaze toward him, his golden eyes steady. And what would you have me do, Aang? Explain to them that I'm not a madman who burns everyone he meets? Apologize for horrors I never committed? They fear me because I am strong and because I come from the Fire Nation. And you of all people should know that you and your friends considered me the greatest evil in the world despite me not hurting you or doing anything really. All of this bad publicity will fade once the Jade Palace begins accepting students. Aang pressed his lips together, he knew Tai Lung was right. He and his friends had an image of an evil fire monster in their minds. Yes, Tai Lung was scary powerful, inhumanly so, but what did he do? He avoided fighting and harming the innocent where he could. They saw that as clear as the day and yet chose to fear the image instead of the person. They chose to fight instead of trying to talk, like Iroh suggested. Aang stared at the rippling water for some time before saying, You're really going to do this, he said quietly. Build a place to maintain peace, in place of the Avatar? Of course, Tai Lung answered. I want the people to maintain peace themselves. And for that to happen, they must unite and train together so their purpose isn't gain, power, pride, or glory, but peace and balance alone. And let's face it, leaving the decision to a single person is not exactly a good thing even if the person has a good intention. Do I need to remind you how you and the Ocean Spirit chose to fight in the war instead of saving the Moon Spirit? Aang lowered his head, mulling over the words. The faint hiss of the sea breeze filled the silence between them. Then Tai Lung spoke again. Do you hate me? The question caught Aang off guard. Aang hesitated, his brow furrowing as he searched in himself. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest. I don't know what I'm feeling anymore, he said. I feared the destruction I thought you'd bring. I feared my friends getting hurt. And yes, I was angry at you for what you did to the White Lotus, and to Rava. But at the same time, I hate that I can't decide whether you're truly evil or not. I hate that I don't know what's right or wrong anymore. And I have no past lives to ask for guidance anymore. Tai Lung regarded him quietly. I expected you to outright hate me, he said. After all, I denied you the role and name you believed were destined for you. Because of me, you're no longer the Avatar. You'll never be. I took that from you. Aang shook his head slowly. I'm not angry or sad that I'm not the Avatar. I ran away 100 years ago when I first learned I was. It felt like a responsibility I never asked for. Everyone looked up to me and expected me to fix their problems, to fight and kill in the name of peace. It went against everything the monks taught me. He lifted his gaze, meeting Tai Lung's eyes. When you and Vatur removed Rava from me, I felt empty. Like part of me had been torn away. I still feel that emptiness. But at the same time, I feel relieved. Relieved that it's no longer my responsibility. Relieved that the worst I feared about you, that you'd destroy everything, isn't true. Tai Lung's mouth curved in something between a smile and a sigh. It's ironic, he murmured. You and I are opposites. Aang tilted his head. How so? There was a time, Tai Lung said slowly, his eyes drifting toward the horizon, when others placed expectations on me too, the highest imaginable expectations. I didn't run from them. I embraced them. I was told I was destined for greatness, and I believed it. When that destiny was denied, I grew angry. Spiteful. I hurt innocence, just to prove I was worthy. My actions proved the opposite, that I am not worthy to have what I thought I deserved. He looked down at the sea, its vastness swallowing the reflection of the sun. If I had been born in your place, he said softly, almost to himself, I dread what might have become of the world. Aang frowned, uncertain what he meant, but he could sense the heaviness in the man's words, the weight of regret that time could not undo. And now? Aang asked after a while. What if it happens again? Tai Lung's golden eyes softened as he looked toward the horizon. I've received my punishment, he said. And I've been forgiven. But I don't believe that alone absolves me of my wrongs. I don't intend to repeat them. Now, he said, almost with reverence, I truly understand the meaning of words a certain old turtle used to say, yesterday is history to learn from. Tomorrow is a mystery to discover. But today. He looked up at the open sky, the sunlight dancing on the sea like sparks of life. The present is a gift. And it's one I intend to be thankful for. Destiny is ever-changing like everything else. For a long while, neither Aang nor Tai Lung spoke. Then, as though a thought had just sprouted in his mind, Aang spoke, his tone gentler than before. This turtle you speak of, he said at last, sounds like a wise one. Tai Lung gave a small, almost amused smile. Yes, he said, it's the wisest turtle there is, but it's frustrating to interact with. It speaks in riddles, sometimes masks silly jokes behind wise words and acts, and pauses as if the weight of the world rests on every word it utters. It has its faults like the rest of us. Aang chuckled lightly, you told me during our fight that I'm stronger than someone called Pa. Who's that? Tai Lung's smile deepened slightly, yes. In the Avatar state, you were stronger than the fat panda. Aang blinked. Do you have a habit of referring to people as animals? You even called yourself a snow leopard. I don't have that habit, Tai Lung replied, his tone unbothered. I simply use a fitting description. Aang raised a brow. Then what would you call me? The tattooed human, Tai Lung answered without hesitation. Ing frowned. I mean as an animal. Human, Tai Lung replied again, this time with the faintest smirk. Ing sighed in exasperation. But you call yourself a snow leopard, whatever that is. Do you remember how I looked when I transformed? Tai Lung asked. Yes. That's a snow leopard, Tai Lung said simply. Ing nodded thoughtfully. So about your transformation. Can others do it too? Tai Lung paused, clearly considering the question. I'm honestly not sure, he admitted after a moment. If they open their chakras and their chi reaches a certain level, they might be able to achieve something similar or at least attain a state unique to themselves. But such conditions are extremely difficult to meet. Aang nodded again, his curiosity only deepening. What about the evil jade art? Did you learn the jade art in the spirit world? Tai Lung turned his head, one brow arched. Yes, I learned it from a greedy old yak. And you're awfully talkative all of a sudden. Aang gave a sheepish grin. I'm bored. Traveling on a small boat is terrible. And besides. He looked at Tai Lung, you don't seem to be an evil person. Tai Lung let out a quiet hum. You change your mind awfully fast. You were confused about me just a while ago. I still am, Aang admitted, and I'm still angry about some of the things you've done even after everything you told me. But as a monk, I should learn to forgive, especially when the target of my hate holds no malice toward me. Air Nomad teaching? Tai Lung asked, his tone curious. Aang nodded once. Tai Lung was silent for a long moment. The sea stretched endlessly before them. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. Are you interested in joining the Jade Palace? He asked. You'll be my student. Aang's eyes went wide. Wait, what? You want me to be your student? Tai Lung looked at him blankly. Did I stutter? No, it's just. Aang stammered, blinking rapidly. It's a surprising offer. Why would you even want me there? Tai Lung replied, you're the ex-avatar, he said simply. Showing the world that we've put our conflict behind us will send the right message. And beyond that, I'm interested in the culture and teachings of the air nomads. You're the last of them. He paused a little before continuing, lastly, even without Rava, you're still a master of airbending and you still have great room to grow. Aang's lips parted slightly, the wind brushing past him like a whisper of the past. He was about to refuse, he wanted to but for some reason he couldn't answer. He looked down at the water, watching the moving surface. I need some time to think about it, he said finally. Tai Lung nodded once. You have all the time you need. And for a moment, as the boat drifted across the glowing sea, the silence between them felt peaceful.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.